Batman's Owl Godfather. Greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement: this story is 100% epic fiction, so please don't attempt real magic. The results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Chapter 51, Heading to New World. Bruce returned to his dorm with Dumbledore's gift. "Old Ben didn't give me cocoa," Katoom complained in Bruce's ear, leaving Batboy feeling somewhat frustrated. "You ate so much at the banquet just now, I couldn't even pour you any. Whether I drink or not is my business," the owl complained. "I just want some attitude." Bruce shook his head, ignoring Katoom's ramblings. He dragged a box from under his bed. Inside was the Batman suit he had made himself. Bruce stared at the suit for a long time. Then, he raised a finger and said, "Rip." With a curse, the suit in the box instantly shredded into countless pieces of cloth. Katoom asked, "What? You don't want to be Batman anymore?" Bruce shook his head and said, "It's just a piece of clothing." He cleaned up the scraps, cleared a box, and began to pack. The school year was almost over. Once the exam results came out, first grade would officially be over. The day for the results would soon arrive. Bruce ranked first in the grade, followed closely by Hermione Granger. But surprisingly, Hermione did not get upset this time. On the contrary, she accepted the results calmly. Hermione, at such a young age, already understood that life was already difficult and there was no need to torture herself. What was the point of competing with Bruce in grades? Even if he ranked first in the grade, wouldn't he still have to help her carry her luggage when she left school? At the end of the school year, Bruce came out of the castle and followed Hagrid onto the fleet, crossing the lake again. However, this time, there was no dark shadow of the giant squid swimming across the lake. The whistle of the Hogwarts train blew, and the train started, passing through the wilderness and Muggle towns, and the outside world gradually became prosperous. Platform 9 3/4 arrived. Bruce and Hermione changed into ordinary clothes and got off the train. Bruce, Neville, who was traveling with him, stuttered. "I'd like to invite you to my house for the summer vacation, of course, you and Hermione, both coming. Is that okay?" This wasn't Neville's first invitation. For the past year, Neville had been constantly bullied at Hogwarts. Each time, either Bruce would come to his defense or Hermione would take him along. Neville's grandmother had written several times, urging Neville to invite them both to her home. For Bruce, this was no problem. He was about to nod his agreement when Katoom leapt onto his shoulder. "I can't go." "Refuse him, huh? Why not?" Bruce naturally assumed the worst. "Does Neville have an ulterior motive for inviting me?" "No, ulterior motives require thinking, and Neville can't remember them," Katoom said. "But we're leaving here for another world." Summer vacations in the Harry Potter world generally didn't offer any significant events. First-year summer vacations were especially uneventful. Instead of wasting 2 months, why not take Bruce out for a stroll? But this sudden news startled Bruce. "Leaving now? So sudden. Are we coming back?" Bruce feigned indifference. "If not, at least let me say goodbye to my aunt and the others." "What are you thinking?" "Of course we'll come back," Katoom said. "The world is about to turn to chaos. It looks like a good time for you to grow up. We're just taking advantage of the summer vacation to travel." "Wait, you're not reluctant to leave, are you?" "I'm not," Bruce denied immediately. "Still denying it?" Owl laughed. "You kid. You said before that you didn't want family because you were afraid you'd be vulnerable." "I told you I didn't." Bruce calmly changed the subject. "Since we're coming back, what's your excuse for leaving?" Katoom had already thought of it. "Just say you're going to America to sort out some inheritance matters for about a summer." It was a reasonable excuse. Bruce immediately put his knowledge into practice, revealing a look of regret as he told Neville, "I'm so sorry, I have to go to America this summer to deal with some family matters." Neville's face immediately sank. "Well, I hope you have a safe trip." "It's okay, Neville. We'll have the chance sometime." Bruce patted Neville on the shoulder. "I'll bring you a gift." When Bruce and Hermione stepped off the platform, the Grangers were already waiting. In the car, Bruce reiterated his plans for America. "It's about my father's family. Everything's been arranged, so don't worry." This news came as a surprise to Hermione, who had originally planned to take Bruce to the beach. Mrs. Granger, however, looked indignant. "It's good that someone's there to take care of it. I'm afraid if I went with them, I'd be mad at them." The family that had abandoned her sister was Mrs. Granger's lifelong enemy. Mr. Granger was even more considerate. "Remember to let us know you're safe when you get to America. Tell us if you encounter any difficulties." Bruce nodded repeatedly. Reporting his safety was no problem. He still wrote to Alfred weekly, though he couldn't get a reply. A few days later, everything was arranged. Bruce didn't need to pack anything. Everything he needed was stuffed into Katoom's feathers. "Let's go." Just like last time, an illusory cave opened beneath Bruce's feet, and he fell into it. It was the same bizarre tunnel of the heavens. Katoom's claws grasped Bruce's shoulders and carried him away to a strange world. This time, Bruce had experience and was less panicked. He calmed himself, passing through countless worlds, faintly hearing voices from them. "It hurts. It hurts so much. Isolde, why are you, Miska, Muska, Mickey Mouse, those who invade the territory of Great Woo? Let's go get a barbecue tonight. Prepare for attack immediately." Before he knew it, Bruce had traveled a great distance. He finally couldn't help but ask, "Which world are we going to?" "Which world?" Katoom said casually. "I've been searching for the answer to that question, too." "Huh?" Bruce hadn't expected Katoom to pull this one. "You brought me out here without even a destination?" He was about to speak when he heard Katoom say, "Hey, this world's great. I'll show you the world." Without waiting for Bruce to react, the owl flapped its wings and carried him off in a plummeting direction. 2050. America, wasteland. A great war that year saw the X-Men disbanded, and the Avengers decimated. The world fell into the hands of supercriminals. 50 years had passed, and no new heroes had appeared. Chapter 52. Bruce's second visit to the orphanage. Santa Fe, the capital of New Mexico. This is the border between the United States and Mexico, filled with chaos and violence. Beneath the deserted and desolate appearance of the city, there is a prosperity formed by crime. Actually, I'm not surprised by this arrangement at all. Bruce stood in front of a building, looking at the half-fallen sign on it, which read Santa Fe Orphanage. Really, I'm not surprised at all, and I don't care. "So Katoom, come down." Bruce showed a kind smile, hid his clenched fists behind his back, and called to the owl flying in the sky. Katoom flapped his wings and explained again, "I have said many times that the identity is not arranged by me. Do you think I am the kind of owl who likes to make fun of other people's scars, isn't it?" Bruce almost laughed out of anger. He had been with Katoom for more than a year, and hadn't the owl played enough jokes on him? At the beginning, he didn't know anything, and the owl took him to the orphanage, and he pinched his nose and accepted it. But now it happened again, which made Bruce couldn't help but start to doubt. Maybe the identity of the world was arranged by the owl, otherwise it would not explain why he was placed in an orphanage twice. Does the whole universe know that he, Bruce Wayne, is an orphan? Suffering from the lack of evidence in his hands, Bruce could only say a harsh word in the end, "Don't let me catch you, I don't want to bother with you." Katoom also has a temper. He threw down such a sentence, then turned around and flew away. The reason why this world was chosen before was because Katoom found that this world was on the verge of destruction, and the intensity was within an acceptable range, so it was just right to bring Bruce here to broaden his horizons. Katoom only knew that this was Marvel, but he still had to investigate which world it was. "If you have the guts, don't come back." Bruce cursed and walked into the orphanage. This orphanage is very small, with only one old building. When Bruce walked in, he didn't even see Mammy, and the others didn't care what Bruce had just done. The whole courtyard was dead silent. As a senior orphanage reviewer, Bruce gave it a bad review without hesitation. However, it was impossible for Bruce to really pursue the comfort of the orphanage. He just found a place to sit and wait for what happened next. He knew that the arrangement of his identity was not over yet. Sure enough, as the footsteps approached, two private detectives walked in from outside the gate. They compared a photo with each other, and came to Bruce with joy on their faces. "Huh?" Bruce saw the faces of the two men clearly and frowned. "Why are you two here again?" They looked exactly like the private detectives in the Woo's orphanage last time. "Excuse me, are you Bruce Wayne?" "It's me." Bruce was already familiar with the place. "Fick is dead, right? How much did you leave for me?" "Just tell me." If the two private detectives haven't changed, then Bruce believes that the name of the fake father has not changed either. Fake Wayne. The two private detectives looked at each other, not expecting things to develop like this. But they also quickly confirmed Bruce's idea. Indeed, fake Wayne, the head of the Wayne family far away in New York, died unexpectedly and left a legacy waiting for Bruce to inherit. Master Bruce, the private detective showed a flattering smile. The property you can inherit is no less than $1 billion US. Huh? Bruce's eyes became sharp in an instant. What's going on? Last time it was 3 billion, but this time it's only 1 billion? He couldn't help but look at the two detectives with a scrutinizing look. Could it be that you two secretly took kickbacks? The two private detectives immediately groaned. How could they have such courage? After trying to explain for a long time, they finally convinced Bruce that in this era, it was not easy for the Wayne family to retain $1 billion US fortune. What do you mean by this era? Bruce wanted to ask a few more questions, but the two private detectives had already left in a hurry. They only left one sentence at the end, that if Bruce wanted to inherit the billion, he had to go to New York in person, and they were only responsible for notifying. Compared with the last century, this inheritance was much less humane. Bruce actually had to go there in person. This can only mean one thing, that is, in today's America, the trading systems in different places may no longer be interoperable. Bruce had a vague feeling that this world might be even more unstable than he imagined. At this moment, the owl flapped its wings and flew back from a distance. The first sentence he said when he landed beside Bruce was, "Bruce, we won the prize." Marvel Multiverse. This was the first time Bruce heard this word from Katoom. Before he could get to know it in depth, Katoom began to say 50 years ago, the United States had a very glorious era of superheroes, and all kinds of superheroes emerged in endlessly. Mutants, serum warriors, tech heroes, magicians, and even gods from another world. They formed an alliance to protect world peace, but just at the height of the superhero era, a sudden war destroyed everything. Superheroes fell one after another, and America fell into the hands of criminals. In the end, it became what we see now, Katoom said, handing Bruce several newspapers. Bruce took them and, after just one glance, was disgusted. The headlines were about the great President Red Skull, who had issued an order declaring everyone in a certain area a rebel and demanding their indiscriminate extermination. Isn't this the mainland United States? Bruce's worldview was profoundly shaken. He couldn't understand how a president could implement a scorched earth policy for his own country. He looked up at Katoom, his eyes filled with questioning. Is this really a good place for a vacation? It's okay. No matter how dangerous the world becomes, you'll always be safe, the owl assured Bruce. Even if you die, I can at most use the Dionysus factor to resurrect you. Then why don't you use it now? Bruce asked. You said before that the Dionysus factor has self-healing abilities. If you use it on me now, I won't even have to die. Well, Katoom seemed a little hesitant. The main reason is that I haven't figured out where this Dionysus factor came from. If it was extracted from the Joker's body, and then I used it on you, you would be infected with a Joker virus. Joker. Bruce heard Katoom say that this person seemed to be his future nemesis, a guy made up of madness. The purest Dionysus factor exists in the Joker's body. Bruce couldn't help asking, what would happen if I was infected with a Joker virus? August. Katoom thought for a moment, that would probably be fun. Chapter 53, The Hero's Sunset. So what's going on? Bruce asked. Is this the dark multiverse you mentioned? Katoom shook his head. Dark multiverse? No, far from it. The DC Universe's dark multiverse, formerly the dark realm used by the world forgers to forge worlds, exists to provide the multiverse with a world filled with light and hope. In other words, the true dark multiverse is the waste product of the world's forging, a world of crime and despair. But this world is different. Even though it's been occupied by supervillains, it still retains a hint of light. Let's go, Katoom said. Since we're here, let's explore other parts of this world. Perfectly. Don't you have $1 billion in New York? Let's go get it and spend it on me. Bruce thought Al was being a bit whimsical. He picked up the newspaper, pointed to the map, and said, Can you please come to your senses? We're in New Mexico, in the southwest corner of the United States, and New York is in the northeast. Are you saying we're going to cross the entire United States just for $1 billion? Bruce has no money right now, and Katoom's proposal is equivalent to asking them to cross the United States on foot. Owls can fly, but Bruce can only walk. And according to the marks on the map, there are poor mountains and bad waters everywhere along the way. Hulk Gang, Green Goblin territory, Ghost Riders, Kingpin Dynasty, Doom's Lair, Hammerfall, Ant-Man Crossroads. Bruce doesn't know what these names mean, but he knows that these places will definitely be troublesome. He is not afraid of trouble, but he just doesn't think it is necessary. If he really crosses these places, Bruce doubts whether he can reach the other side in 2 months. Then find a few people to go together. The owl had a flash of inspiration, clenched its wings into fists, and stretched out a feather. "Hey, I have a good candidate." "Who?" Bruce asked. "This damn owl. How come he seems to have connections everywhere?" "A superhero in this world," Katoom said. "His name is Wolverine. Speaking of which, he is one of your seniors." "Huh?" Katoom was talking nonsense before, and Bruce just ignored it as a joke, but now he says that this world has his own senior? What? The people in Hogwarts are randomly refreshed in the whole universe. But Katoom swore, "I'm not talking nonsense. The uniform is yellow and black, and the prototype is Wolverine. If he doesn't graduate from Hufflepuff, no one will believe it. Looking at his appearance, he must get Wolverine a student status today." Bruce was too lazy to argue with the owl anymore. "Okay, where are we going to find him?" Well, Katoom couldn't give an answer for a moment. Speaking of which, this world is not entirely the universe of Homecoming, nor is it the universe of Logan. It's more like a combination of the two. According to known information, the X-Men were wiped out, but Professor X himself was not dead, but was determined to be missing. Missing with him was Wolverine Logan. So Katoom has reason to suspect that the current Wolverine is not like in the comics, forming an ordinary family, and his destiny has deviated. Of course, Owl would not think that Professor X is still alive after 50 years. "In this case, let's go to the US-Mexico border," Katoom said. "We can also experience the feeling of going in the opposite direction." In the desolate border area, on the dusty road, a shabby car was speeding, and finally stopped beside a dilapidated warehouse. The car door opened, and a man with fatigue written all over his body got out. The man looked to be in his 70s, with messy stubble, pale hair, and his once sharp eyes were now bloodshot and listless. He is Logan Howlett, the former superhero Wolverine. He is even older than his image in Wolverine 3. He went deep into the warehouse and pushed open the door. There was a bed full of IV drips. The person lying on the bed was skin and bones, and his face was haggard. It seemed that he was on his deathbed. No one could recognize that this was the once famous Professor X. Next to the bed sat another old man, who was also in his twilight years, but his spirit was completely different from Logan. "Thank you for your hard work, Clint." Logan called out the old man's name. He was Clint Barton, Hawkeye, who was once an Avenger. This sharpshooter who used to hit the target with every shot has now lost almost 100% of his vision due to glaucoma. Logan bent down and placed the bag full of medicine next to the bedside table, then supported his waist and barely stood up. Has he woke up? No. Hawkeye shook his head. It seems that he will be in these few days. Really? When Logan heard this, a complex look flashed in his eyes. He looked at the old man on the hospital bed, who had almost completely lost his perception of the outside world, and his heart was filled with mixed feelings. "Okay," Logan said after a long time, "it's a good thing that he is freed." "Logan, are you really not going to help me?" At this time, Hawkeye spoke. "What are you going to do after the professor is gone? Our lives have come to the end. We should always burn. This is the reason why Hawkeye Clint has been staying here." He wanted to ask Logan to do something big, but every time he got a response, it was a rejection. So Hawkeye finally refused to leave here and refused to leave until he got a positive answer. And Logan was not moved at all by this. He simply treated Hawkeye as a nanny and asked him to take care of the dying Professor X. "I will never fight with anyone again." Logan still said the same thing. "Clint, just give up on this idea." Hawkeye did not react much after hearing this. After all, people get used to being rejected too many times. Suddenly cough cough cough, a faint cough came from the hospital bed, and the comatose Professor X woke up. "Professor." Logan quickly helped the professor up and patted his back gently. After Professor X had breathed smoothly, Logan helped Professor X lie down. "Thank you, Hank." Professor X thanked him in a thin voice. Hawkeye sighed. "Professor, he is Logan, not Hank." Hank had long ago. Hank, once a member of the X-Men, codenamed Beast. He died 50 years ago. A feeling that everything has changed and people have changed grew in Hawkeye's heart. The most powerful mind in the world was now completely demented and could not even recognize the people around him. Professor X was still talking. this time to Hawkeye. "Scott, why are you here alone? Where is Jean?" Scott, codenamed Cyclops, was also an X-Men who died 50 years ago. Hawkeye was even more sad. "I'm not Cyclops, I just have glaucoma now." Chapter 54 The Hope of the Old Ones. X's awakening this time was different from previous ones, and he was in much better condition. But this wasn't something to celebrate. Logan knew this was just the professor's last gasp. His time was truly running out. "Great, great," Professor X exclaimed happily, reaching out to either side and holding Logan and Hawkeye tightly. "We're reunited here again, and with new guests." Then he raised his head, facing the empty space ahead, and lowered his voice, as if speaking to a child. "Good boy, have you just arrived in this world? I see your heart. You carry a heavy burden. Don't worry. Although you may feel lost and disappointed in yourself at times, it's okay. We're not perfect, and you're already amazing." Logan sighed heavily. The old man's acting up again. "Clint, hold him down while I give him some medicine." But even as he spoke, Professor X heard him. The already emaciated Professor X suddenly found strength from nowhere and shook off Logan's hand. No. Could you please be quiet and stop interrupting my communication with him?" Professor X cursed, his voice fiercely defiant. "I haven't seen a child like this in ages. He's untainted by this world. I want to see him. I'm guiding him here, that's not up to you." Logan dismissed Professor X's nonsense. Working alongside Hawkeye, the two white-haired elders pinned down the hairless Charles. Logan injected a sedative into Professor X's system. The professor's spirits immediately withered, his mumbling inaudible words. Logan breathed a sigh of relief. If it were just an ordinary old man with dementia, there wouldn't be such fuss. But this was Professor X, Charles Xavier, the most powerful mind in the world. If he lost control of his thoughts, the consequences for those around him would be dire. There had been countless similar tragedies over the past 50 years. Though it was a bit cruel, if Charles was truly to die, Logan hoped it would be a quiet, silent death in his sleep, a peaceful passage into the good night. Don't have a last-ditch outburst. When you go, take a group with you. Hank, Professor X lowered his head, his voice thin and tinny. Go meet him at the door. He'll be here soon. He hopes that our world will be destroyed, but he'll remember us. I'm not Hank. Logan didn't take the professor's words to heart. He first corrected Charles's address, then softened his expression, patted Professor X's back, and helped him lie down. Stop imagining it. No one's coming. Besides, while this world is certainly in terrible shape, talk of destruction is ridiculous, isn't it? Charles, you used telepathy to trick people when you were young, and now you're old and confused. You're pretending to be a prophet again? That's enough. But just as Logan was about to coax Charles to sleep, Hawkeye, who had been silent beside him, suddenly spoke. Logan, Hawkeye listened to the noise outside. Someone's coming. Judging by the footsteps, it's a child. Logan was speechless. Was the old man not confused this time? Go forward, then turn left at the end, the owl on Bruce's shoulder instructed him on the way. How did you suddenly know the way? Bruce frowned. Weren't we just wandering aimlessly? You think I do, Katoom sighed. There's an old man chattering in my head, and I have to know. Old man, it's Professor X, once a leader. I thought he was dead long ago, Katoom said. Come to think of it, he probably wanted to talk to you. But your occlumency curse hadn't lifted, and our heads were too close, so the call went straight to me. The owl couldn't help but sigh. Professor X was really old. He could even mistake the person he was telepathically communicating with. Bruce was a little puzzled. Telepathy wasn't surprising to him, the magical world had similar methods. But he had just arrived in this world. Why would someone want to find him? What did you talk about with that old man? Nothing, Katoom said. We just discussed what to do if the child isn't obedient. If you don't want to talk about it, forget it. Bruce shook his head and continued walking along the path the owl had pointed out. Turning a corner, he came upon a dilapidated warehouse. Two elderly men were waiting in front of it. Is this the hope the professor spoke of? Logan frowned. He spotted Bruce from a distance and, after a quick look, saw nothing special besides the owl on his shoulder. Hawkeye, however, looked delighted. It seems the professor is telling the truth. He has indeed found a soul untainted by sin. He stepped forward to greet Bruce. Bruce saw only a smiling, white-haired man with a ponytail approaching him. Whether he was a friend or foe, he remained uncertain. The old man drew closer, his lack of boundaries making him feel uneasy. He wore round-framed sunglasses and moved with the air of a blind man. Was he feigning blindness to elicit his sympathy? Bruce wasn't sure, so he leaned over and stretched out his leg, trying to trip Hawkeye, just to test him. Sure enough, Hawkeye stopped just before he was about to trip. Ha, you're quite cautious. Good. If you want to survive in this era, you need to be cautious. Hawkeye leaned over, trying his best to be friendly. Don't be afraid, we're not bad people. Clint raised his hands, indicating his intentions. Someone said you were a good kid and led you here. We trusted him, and so we trust you too. My name is Clint Barton. What's your name? Bruce glanced at the owl, his eyes questioning whether he could trust him. Don't worry, Katoom said. The old man's strength is limited, he's not a big threat. Bruce was relieved. My name is Bruce Wayne. Nice name, nice name. Hawkeye was a little too enthusiastic. He gestured for Bruce to come with him. Come on, someone wants to see you. He seems a little overjoyed, Bruce said, walking behind Katoom. Maybe you gave him hope, Katoom said casually. In fact, if there was anyone in this world who still had a passion to avenge his fallen companions and change this dark world, it would be the aging Hawkeye. He never gave up his faith, so much so that even after losing his sight, he learned from the elderly Daredevil how to maintain his fighting ability despite being blind. Unfortunately, he lacked superpowers and his abilities were limited. Katoom could guess why Hawkeye was with Wolverine. He was seeking a partner to accomplish great things. But Wolverine was no longer a superhero. Unsurprisingly, Hawkeye had been rejected many times. Many said what Hawkeye was doing was meaningless, that the current world was not worth saving. But now, with Bruce's presence, Hawkeye had an answer. Isn't a child with a future filled with hope worth protecting? Even Hawkeye couldn't see through the fog of the future, but someone had to support the children's future. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55 I Want to Burn the Last of My Youth. When they entered Professor X's room, he was already fast asleep. He lay motionless, his sleep a perfect peace. What a coincidence, Hawkeye said, his smile still on his face. Let's wait a while. It's okay. Let's use this time to get to know each other. Bruce had already spotted the old man lying in bed. It was hard to believe such a scrawny old man could be the former leader of the mutants, as Katoom had said. He looked at the other two. One was sitting on the sofa, pouring himself a bottle of wine, completely uninterested in the outside world. Was this the Wolverine Logan Katoom had mentioned? The hero who had saved the world so many times? How fake. Bruce saw only a deep sense of decadence in this old man, no trace of heroism. Hawkeye, on the other hand, was a bit better, but his overzealousness made him look like a geek. Is this what a superhero's later years look like? Bruce felt his outlook on life flipped upside down. If I became a hero, would my later years be like this? No, don't worry, Katoom quickly consoled him. If it were the original you, there would most likely be no later years, so there's no need to worry. Bruce took a deep breath, calming himself. The owl's beak was even uglier than a crow's. Bruce, anything to drink? Old Hawkeye opened the refrigerator, rummaging through it like a grandfather next door, looking for something to feed the child. But he forgot that this was Wolverine's refrigerator, and it only contained alcohol. Hawkeye searched for a long time before finding 2 bottles of mineral water and handed one to Bruce. I'm so sorry, kid, these are all we have at home, thank you. Bruce took the mineral water, and Hawkeye sat down next to him. Bruce, where are you from? Hawkeye asked curiously. I mean, you walked here alone. Bruce shook his head and pointed at Katoom. No, I came here with him. Hawkeye's expression suddenly dawned on him. I see. You travel with your animal companions. I've had teammates like that before. Their animal companions were all kinds of interesting, like kestrels, ants, and raccoons. As he spoke of the past, it was as if he had been transported back 50 years. Bruce didn't want to interrupt an old man's reminiscence, so he could only listen silently, water bottle in hand. But Hawkeye's constant chatter was indeed a bit intrusive. Speaking of which, I once had a companion named Falcon. He could communicate with birds, and I learned a few tricks from him. Hawkeye seemed to want to quickly build a close relationship with Bruce and tried hard to find a topic of conversation. He glanced at the owl on Bruce's shoulder. "Well, do you want me to show you?" Without waiting for Bruce's approval, he began a conversation with Katoom. "Hey little birdie, how are you, Katoom, idiot?" Hawkeye kept smiling and pointed at the owl and said to Bruce, "Look, your little bird was saying hello to me just now." Bruce did not expose him. He just blamed Katoom through telepathy. "Can you be more civilized? The other party is an old man after all. I am the most fucking civilized owl in the whole world." Katoom sneered. "When will this old dang find out that Professor X is dead?" Bruce, huh? "Perhaps. A world that is about to be destroyed is always full of surprises. It is reasonable that a happy event turns into a funeral." After Bruce euphemistically suggested that he would go to see Professor X, the two old men, Logan and Clint, finally found that Professor X had died in his sleep. Perhaps they had been mentally prepared for a long time, and they quickly accepted the fact in silence. The two held a simple funeral for Professor X and buried him next to a lake. At least this place is close to the water and has a bit of the feeling of Xavier's school in the past. May he rest in peace soon. Hawkeye squatted in front of the professor's tombstone, and Logan stood behind him. Although their expressions were solemn, they did not show too much sadness. In this era, death is not a bad thing for Professor X today. Moreover, the day when Hawkeye and Logan, two old men, will reunite with Professor X will not be far away. "It's a pity he actually wants to see you very much." Hawkeye stood up and came to Bruce's side. "He said that you are Hope, so he guided you here." "I don't know what he means. Maybe he is saying that you will inherit the mantle of our superhero." "I actually have a lot of stories to tell you. Stories about the former Captain America, Iron Man, Thor and a series of predecessors. But there is no time now, Bruce. I'm really glad to meet you before I leave." Professor X's death strengthened Hawkeye's belief. He realized that he was already old and death could come at any time. He could not delay what he wanted to do any longer. Since Wolverine was unwilling to join, he would do it alone, even if the result was to be torn to pieces. Bruce's eyes stayed on Professor X's grave. It's not that he had never seen death before, but this was the first time he saw the end of a superhero. Bruce didn't know Professor X, nor did he know what he had done. He only heard about his few deeds from Katoomba. But no matter what, Professor X must have had passionate years in his life. But now, he left silently like this, without a coffin, and even the tombstone was just a simple wooden board. Bruce really couldn't help but think about it. Will he be like this in the future? Burning his whole life for justice, and then dying in a deserted corner. Is this the price of being a hero? Can he accept this kind of ending? "Katoom," Bruce suddenly asked, "is this why you brought me into this world?" "Maybe." Katoom's answer was ambiguous. Their conversation did not continue because Hawkeye was leaving. When he passed by Logan, Logan suddenly asked, "Where are you going?" "You know it." Hawkeye pretended to be relaxed. "I'm going to the New Utopia to burn my last youth." New Utopia. Suddenly, Bruce's voice came. Is this New Utopia the former New York? He was still not used to the name New York, because in the DC world, there is no New York, only Gotham and Metropolis. Hawkeye was also in a trance because of the name New York. This is really a long-standing memory. "I guess so," Hawkeye said. "What's wrong? Take me with you." Bruce stated his purpose. "Actually, I wanted to go to New York, but it's inconvenient to go alone." Hawkeye subconsciously wanted to refuse. "What I do is very dangerous. I can protect myself." Bruce interrupted Hawkeye, extending his hand and waving a distant rock to float in front of him. Logan, who had remained silent until then, suddenly frowned. "Are you a mutant?" He naturally thought so. Otherwise, why would Professor X have said Bruce was Hope? Bruce remained silent, simply looking at Hawkeye. Hawkeye frowned for a long time before finally making a decision. "All right. But I'll only take you to the New Utopia, that's enough." Bruce walked over to Hawkeye, standing beside him, preparing to leave. At this moment, Hawkeye turned back and asked Wolverine one last question. "Logan, are you really not joining?" Chapter 56. Bruce also wants to drive. "I'm not going," Logan refused without hesitation. In this era, there was nothing worth protecting. Hawkeye was helpless. He had insisted on inviting Logan for a very important reason. He was blind, and crossing America was somewhat difficult. Hawkeye finally persuaded, "But what can you do next? Professor X is dead, and you're all alone. There's a lot I can do." Logan remained undeterred. I'll make some money first, and then, you want to make money, right? Bruce suddenly spoke up. I'm going to New York to inherit the family fortune anyway. How about I hire you as my guide? I can give you this amount. He held up a finger. Bruce would only stay in this world for 2 months at most, and $1 billion was nowhere to go. Katoom kept saying he'd spend all his money on him, but to Bruce, that was like throwing money in the trash. In that case, it would be better to offer Logan a higher price. 10 million should be about right. You're going to give me a $10,000 commission? Logan was tempted. That was a lot of money. For someone like him now, it was a fortune he couldn't earn in years. Huh? Bruce realized Logan had misunderstood. He was offering 10 million, not 10,000. But before he could explain, Logan nodded, as if fearing Bruce might change his mind. $10,000, deal, but he emphasized, I'm just a guide. I won't fight, unless you can't come up with the money. With that, Logan stepped forward and gave Hawkeye a shove. Don't just stand there. Let's go. The garage slowly opened, revealing a red convertible SUV with a spiderweb pattern paint job. Spider vehicle. Logan recognized the unusual SUV. How did you get it? It became mine after Spider-Man died. Hawkeye smiled, getting behind the wheel and indicating that he would drive. Logan, as the guide, would be responsible for reading the map and keeping track of the road. How about I drive? Logan asked, a little worried about Hawkeye's vision. No, I can handle it myself. Get in. Logan took the passenger seat. Bruce and Katoom sat in the back. Hawkeye touched the steering wheel, a look of regret on his face. You guys are so kind to me, Hawkeye said with emotion. I used to drive a taxi to make a living, but I was treated terribly. They discriminated against me because I was blind and wouldn't ride in my car. It's okay, we don't discriminate against you, Logan said, but his hand reached for the seatbelt buckle, trying to get out of the car secretly. How could Hawkeye give him the chance? He slammed the accelerator, and the roar of the engine instantly shattered the silence of the border wasteland. The tires scraped against the dry ground, kicking up clouds of dust. The spider chariot seemed to be infused with life, like a wild beast unleashed, rushing towards the unknown road ahead. Hawkeye's driving skills were unparalleled. Despite his blindness, his exceptional hearing and keen senses allowed him to accurately assess road conditions. Under his control, the spider vehicle slithered across the wasteland like a nimble snake, leaving trails of dust in its wake. Don't worry, Hawkeye said as he drove, a hint of pride in his voice. Although I can't see, I can hear the tires scraping against the ground and sense the wind's speed and direction. Many sighted people aren't as skilled as I am, all right. Unable to get out of the car, Logan resigned himself to his fate. He opened the map and studied the route. Although the terrain along the way is treacherous and entrenched with various forces, there are some areas we can circumvent. Logan's finger slowly moved across the map. First, we'll pass through the Hulk gang's territory. It was originally dangerous, but Bruce Banner's been away lately, and his green-skinned bastards have temporarily quieted down. Then we'll pass the Ghost Riders, reach Hammerfall, and finally, cross Ant-Man's Crossroads to reach New Utopia. Hawkeye whistled happily. Thanks to you, Logan. With a clear route in hand, Hawkeye stepped on the accelerator, and the spider vehicle began to race. It was in this situation that the vehicle's extraordinary qualities became apparent. It didn't need to dodge along the way, and even if it encountered a cliff, it could continue moving forward. The vehicle's tires were specially treated to withstand vertical cliffs. The spider vehicle's structural design was truly remarkable. Even after a drop of tens of meters, the vehicle itself would remain intact. The passengers inside, as if they were in an indestructible protective shell, were completely insensitive to any external impact and safe. Bruce sat in the back seat, stroking the vehicle's armrests, his heart pounding. Batman also wanted to drive. Katoom, what do you think about me getting one of these cars someday? Bruce said. Paint it black, and I'd patrol Gotham every night. That would be awesome. Whatever you want, Katoom said casually, just be careful not to get the tires pried off. The spider chariot roared and rushed all the way. After the initial novelty wore off, the scenery along the way began to look the same, all desert rock walls and tumbleweeds. Logan had already closed his eyes and fallen asleep. Bruce also yawned. This journey was more boring than he had imagined. They had walked about 300 kilometers and left the territory of the Hulk gang. Thinking that there were still thousands of kilometers to go, Bruce began to feel bored. Can't you use apparition and take us directly to New York? Bruce asked Katoom. It wouldn't take much energy, right? You ask me to help, and I will. Katoom refused without even thinking. You don't even want to call me Godfather, forget it then. Bruce also closed his eyes, pretending that the conversation just now had never happened. Gradually, the sky began to darken, and in front of them, the outline of an abandoned city appeared. Let's spend the night here first. Hawkeye turned his head. Let's set off tomorrow morning. They entered this abandoned urban area that was once prosperous. The abandoned buildings stood like giants in the dark, and the exterior walls were covered with cracks and peeling marks. The city was dead silent. Dust covered every inch of land, and abandoned vehicles were scattered around, with broken windows and flat tires. Withered vines were entangled on the lampposts, and the wires swayed in the wind, making bursts of wailing. Do you think there are still living people here? Hawkeye asked curiously. Logan in the passenger seat twitched his nose, sniffed the surrounding smell, and then gave an answer. No, it's all moldy here. There is no breath of any living people. Okay. Hawkeye had already guessed the answer. He parked the chariot beside an abandoned road, and several people got off the cart to find a safe place. Let's rest here for the night. You sit for a while, and I'll make a fire. As soon as the voice fell, Logan suddenly objected. There should be no need to make a fire. He pointed to the distance, and several ghost-faced Harleys were coming this way. The roar of the motors was a furious roar, leaving behind a line of fire that drew a clear line between light and darkness. The Ghost Riders are coming. Chapter 57. Can you lift it? The Ghost Riders? Bruce stared into the distance. As they drew closer, their figures gradually became clearer. Flames danced from the motorcycle tires, leaving streaks of blazing fire in their wake. The riders, clad in spiked black leather jackets, brandished chains of fire, streaking through the air with dazzling streaks of light, each swing accompanied by a blood-curdling cry. As the Ghost Riders appeared, Hawkeye issued a warning, "Protect Bruce." Before he could finish his words, the knights had already arrived. A Ghost Rider motorbike passed overhead, and the rider on it delivered a powerful kick to Hawkeye's head. Hawkeye screamed, blood gushing, and collapsed to the ground. Logan, Hawkeye called out to Wolverine, hoping for his help. Then he saw that Logan, without even a backward glance, had run straight towards the spider vehicle, his face as if he had escaped with the swiftness of a teammate in trouble. Wolverine had actually slipped away? Bruce, on the other side, was stunned. It wasn't fear, but sheer shock at Hawkeye and Logan's performance. Weren't these two guys once superheroes? How could they perform so poorly? Logan continued to run, his eyes fixed on the spider chariot in the distance. That place, as long as he could get there. But suddenly, a chain of fire swung around, entangled Logan's feet, and tripped him to the ground. Immediately, several mohawk-haired knights surrounded him, punching and kicking him. "You old bastard, you're still trying to run," they cursed and kicked Logan. Logan, however, showed no desire to fight back. He huddled in his arms, holding his head, and allowed himself to be assaulted. "Kill me, cut me up," Logan gritted his teeth. "I'll never attack anyone again, you're so arrogant," the Ghost Riders laughed. One of them grabbed a nail-studded baseball bat and was about to rip Logan's head off. At that moment, a huge rock flew in the air, knocking the goon back. Then, it rolled over, crushing several Ghost Riders beneath it. Bruce finally couldn't stand it anymore and took action. He first glanced at the minions trapped beneath the rock. "No one will be crushed to death, will they?" Bruce frowned. "I don't want to kill anyone," Katoom assured him. "Of course not. Can't you see they're still breathing? As long as these people weren't dead, Bruce's principle of not killing them wouldn't be broken." "That's good," Bruce said, then approached Logan and offered a hand to help him to his feet. Bruce was finally disappointed with the aging hero. He'd thought he'd retired to the mountains, but it turned out he was old and useless. Was this the Wolverine Katoom had been touting? Was he just kidding himself again? More and more Ghost Riders were surrounding him, and Bruce's actions had completely infuriated them. However, just as they were about to attack Bruce, a sound of air-piercing sounded. An arrow pierced through the head of a small minion. The enemy wailed and fell to the ground. Bruce looked back to see Hawkeye, his face covered in blood. A short bow had appeared in his hand. With his eyes closed, he located all the enemies by sound alone, needing no visual aid. The knight's minions, drawn to Hawkeye's attention, let out strange cries and lunged at him, wielding chains of fire. Hawkeye had finally regained his former superhero demeanor, his white hair disheveled, his bowstring firmly drawn. With each arrow fired, a Ghost Rider fell to the ground. The knights surged forward like a tide, and the white-haired Hawkeye stood at the center, calm and composed. He simply drew his bow and fired, and no one could get close. As the arrows continued to fly, the Ghost Riders fell one by one. Finally, only Hawkeye remained standing. The battle was over. Hawkeye's tense state suddenly relaxed, and he breathed heavily, his age clearly revealed. "Logan, what's wrong with you? Why are you such a coward?" Hawkeye staggered over to Logan's side, his tone filled with anger and accusation. "You don't even dare to take action against a little bastard like this? What happened to you back then? None of your business. This is how I live my life now." Dejected, his spirit completely broken, Logan turned back to the car. "Let's go. It's no longer safe here. Let's rush to our next destination overnight." Hawkeye was frustrated, but ultimately helpless. He could only sigh and motion for Bruce to get in the car. The spider chariot started up again and left the battlefield strewn with corpses. The next morning, after a night of travel, they finally arrived in Hammerfall. It was a city of relative peace amidst the chaos, where countless homeless people had gathered. Hawkeye drove slowly through the city. "I was able to survive back then because those villains thought I was useless, without superpowers, and posed no threat to them at all," Hawkeye muttered to himself. "But what about you? Logan, how did you and Professor X survive?" Logan lowered his head and remained silent, showing no desire to answer Hawkeye's question. Just then, a quarrel erupted on the side of the road. A group of thugs were beating up a skinny guy. But the victim not only refused to fight back, but also wore a fawning smile. He was wearing a cheap blue and white battlesuit, the same one Captain America once wore. The victim was dressed as Captain America. Finally, the thugs tired of the beating and stopped. Captain America smiled and said, "Brothers, did you enjoy the fight?" "Not bad," a thug said, tossing a few crumpled bills at Captain America. "I'll be back next time." Captain America nodded and offered a welcome return visit. This is the business of Hammerfall. Dressing up as a superhero and humiliating others is a way to make money. Seeing this, Logan suddenly spoke up. "Don't just blame me. Captain America was your former comrade, right?" he said coldly. "You don't feel anything after seeing this," but Hawkeye's expression remained unchanged. "I can't see. I'm blind." Bruce remained silent, filled with disappointment. He hadn't expected a former hero to become like this in his old age. Could he truly be called a hero? The spider chariot slowly approached the city center, where a group of people knelt in worship. The object of their worship was the very origin of Hammerfall's name. 50 years ago, a god fell here, leaving behind his weapon. Because no one could lift it, it has been preserved to this day. "Ah, it's Thor's hammer." Katoom leaned out the window and saw the object of worship. A nearly shattered hammer lay quietly there. "Come to think of it, this hammer doesn't quite suit you." Katoom thought for a moment and said, "Your future teammates, Superman and Wonder Woman, have both lifted this hammer, but you haven't. How about giving it a try this time and seeing if you can lift it?" Bruce shook his head without a second thought. "No, I won't." Chapter 58 American Comics Death Knell. "Bruce, are you interested in Thor's hammer?" Hawkeye noticed Bruce's gaze fixed on the distant hammer. He chuckled and decided to give Bruce a little more motivation. "If you can gain Thor's hammer's approval and successfully lift it, you'll possess the power of Thor. How about that? Aren't you tempted?" "Are you sure you're not talking about the sword in the stone?" Bruce averted his gaze, not intending to try. Thor's hammer was already on the verge of breaking, riddled with cracks. Even if he could lift it, how long would it last? And what did it mean to be recognized by the hammer? To be recognized by the hammer was Thor, to be unrecognized was not. That wasn't Thor, it was the hammer god. Bruce's attitude surprised Hawkeye. For the past 50 years, almost everyone who had seen Thor's hammer had tried to lift it at least once. It represented the power and status of a god, and no one could resist its interest. Hawkeye wasn't kidding. After all, even the owl beside Bruce had tried to lift the hammer. Only then did Bruce realize Katoom was gone. He turned and saw that the owl had flown out of the car at some point and was clinging to the hammer, its wings gripping the handle tightly as it pulled out Thor's hammer like a carrot. He kept pushing, but Thor's hammer wouldn't budge. Clearly, Katoom hadn't received Thor's approval. Bruce's face was filled with rage. Katoom finally flew back in indignation. Logically, to lift Thor's hammer, one needs integrity, kindness, courage, and fearlessness. Katoom had all of these qualities, so why couldn't he lift it? The spider chariot continued to drive slowly through the market. Suddenly, a robot stopped in front of the chariot and greeted Hawkeye warmly. The robot was dressed in human clothes and holding a brown paper bag, looking like it had just returned from shopping. "Oh, Hawkeye, thank goodness you're here. It's me, Ultron Vitae." He was clearly looking for Hawkeye, and he asked eagerly, "Have you heard anything from Toya lately?" At the mention of Toya, Hawkeye's composure immediately flared. He leaned out of the car and began chatting with the robot, Ultron Vitae. Katoom knew the relationship between the two. Ultron Vitae was essentially the former Ultron, who, through continuous degeneration, had become the monstrous form he was now, unable to defeat even ordinary humans. The Toya he was referring to was Spider-Man's daughter. Hawkeye was her first husband, and Ultron Vitae was her second. So, in a sense, they were kindred spirits. This time, their conversation was about Hawkeye and Toya's daughter, Ashley. Rebellious by nature, she challenged the Kingpin for power, but failed, was captured, and was scheduled for a public execution tomorrow. Ultron Vitae was his stepfather, seeking help from his biological father. Katoom had no interest in saving Ashley. Ashley is a complete lunatic. The current events are likely following the storyline from Hometown. According to the original plot, after being rescued by Hawkeye, Ashley killed the Kingpin and became the new boss of the land. Her first act upon taking power was to establish her authority by patricide. Poor Bruce, he didn't even have a father, and Ashley was going to kill his own. To protect his child's feelings, Katoom decided to keep Bruce away from Ashley. "Everyone, how about we rest up in Hammerfall for a day?" When Hawkeye turned around, he had already made his decision. He was going to rescue his daughter. The best time to rescue Ashley was at night, and since they had traveled all night, a short break was a reasonable option. Hawkeye didn't ask for help. In his opinion, Logan was too cowardly and Bruce too young to join the operation. Neither Logan nor Bruce objected, and they followed Hawkeye to the home of the 8th Ultron. Hawkeye figured that just waiting for a day wouldn't be a problem. In the Kingpin dynasty, at the arena. Though called an arena, it was actually a dilapidated gymnasium. Here, a few minions were cleaning the place, for tonight, a grand spectacle was to take place. Ali, the assassin of the Kingpin, would be executed tomorrow, and tonight, her minions would battle to the death against Kingpin's dinosaurs. Kingpin's minions were eagerly anticipating the spectacle. However, as they were cleaning, a passage suddenly opened in the void. This sudden change captivated everyone's attention, and they stared at the passage in amazement, unsure of what had happened. A figure slowly emerged from the passage. Only after the figure had completely exited and the passage closed did the minions finally see the figure in full. The newcomer's face was covered by a half-yellow and black tactical helmet. The left side of the helmet featured a striking red eye patch, revealing a single, cold eye beneath. The right side was completely obscured by a black visor, and two bright red ribbons fluttered from the back of the helmet. He was clad in a full suit of metal armor, decked out with a variety of tactical weapons, and slung across his back was a long sword and a short staff. Even just standing there, he looked like a formidable figure. Bruce's second pursuer had arrived. He was Deathstroke, real name Slade Wilson, one of the DC Universe's most renowned mercenaries and assassins, a master of strategy and tactics, combat, and all weaponry. He possessed top-tier physical fitness, extraordinary healing abilities, and a 90% developed brain. He worked solely for money, charging exorbitant fees but always ensuring his clients were satisfied. Having just arrived in this universe, Deathstroke felt the gazes from all directions, the attention he was under. This instilled a sense of insecurity. This was his first time operating in a completely new world, and he was starting from scratch. He had no global safe houses, no transportation or supplies, no intelligence or connections, and he didn't even know what this world's currency was. Everything was zero. Coupled with the curious looks he received the moment he set foot in this world, Deathstroke felt as if he was fully armed but still naked, and was being pointed at. This feeling hadn't happened in decades. Deathstroke was very dissatisfied with his start. His lack of sense of security had to be made up for. At this moment, one of Kingpin's minions bravely asked, "Who are you? Do you know where this place is?" Coincidentally, Deathstroke didn't know where this place was. He looked at the minion who spoke with his cold left eye, and spoke with a hint of mechanical reverberation in his voice. "You asked a good question," he said, "then you can be the last to die." Chapter 59, The Wise General Jin Bing. Kingpin, a title meaning mastermind. For 50 years, only the true ruler of Hammerfall could inherit this prestigious title. Today, Kingpin's real name is forgotten. All that is known is that he came from the most troubled black community and rose to his current position by smashing countless heads with his bare fists. No one dared to oppose him. Death was the ultimate mercy for anyone who displeased Kingpin. After all, the renowned Magneto met his end at his hands. But this time, a blind woman dared to challenge Kingpin's authority and even attempted to usurp it. Everyone knew what awaited her. Kingpin was lying in his bed, basking in the bliss of power, when a sudden sound of footsteps disrupted his mood. Kingpin's face darkened, but because he was black, the darkening of his complexion was less noticeable. Kingpin waved his hand, signaling the 5 women in the room to leave. Immediately, a frightened subordinate entered with trepidation. "Boss," the subordinate knelt before King Byung, nearly bursting into tears. "Oh no. Something's happened at the Colosseum." These words stifled King Byung's threatening outburst. He immediately rolled over and sat up, his arms and legs spread wide, perched beside the bed. "What's going on? Look up and talk." The subordinate looked up immediately, but he dared not look at King Byung. It wasn't because King Byung was terrifying, but because he was naked and the subordinate was kneeling, facing him. "Someone broke into the Colosseum and killed all the brothers there," the subordinate cried out, eyes tightly shut, his voice thick with fear. King Byung relished this state of mind. His subordinate's fear was the greatest form of obedience. He didn't criticize his subordinate for closing his eyes, but simply asked the most crucial questions. "Who? I don't know. How many people? I don't know. How did they get in? I don't know. What the hell do I need you for?" King Byung flew into a rage, kicking his subordinate far away. A useless piece of shit who knew nothing was better than being dragged out to feed his dinosaurs. The men were kicked away, not even daring to scream, and could only crawl on the ground and tremble. Jinbing was furious and stormed out of the room. After a few minutes, he turned back, put on his clothes, and walked out again. Jinbing had prepared himself mentally for the tragic scene in the arena, but the horror of the scene still exceeded his expectations. Dozens of corpses were lying on the ground, with blood all over the ground. The faces of these people were full of fear, as if they died too quickly and didn't even have time to close their eyes. Someone was already here to collect the bodies and examine the cause of death. When Jinbing arrived, everyone immediately stopped what they were doing and stood aside respectfully, waiting for the boss's orders. "What's the situation?" Jinbing asked. "It's an unknown intruder." A man who looked like a small leader came to Jinbing and described the current situation as best he could in a language that the boss could understand. "They were killed by slit throats." Slit throats simply means slashing the throat, killing with a single blow. The other party's attack was swift, without the slightest delay. "That's just a figure of speech. You just know he was formidable. With such skill, he couldn't be an unknown individual. Furthermore, our men also fought back. They fired, but it was clearly ineffective. We found this at the scene." The small leader then produced what he had found: several severely deformed, almost completely crushed bullets. The appearance of such objects could only mean that the bullet struck an extremely hard object, so hard that they couldn't penetrate even a fraction, ultimately crushed by their own kinetic energy. King Byung calmly asked, "So what's our conclusion now?" "Our conclusion is that the intruder was a supremely skilled assassin wearing sturdy armor." King Byung frowned and asked, "Sturdy armor? Where did you get that conclusion?" "Up." The small leader paused for a moment, then raised the bullets in his hand. "Because of this, stupid." King Byung suddenly shouted angrily, "When will you guys use your brains? Is armor the only thing that can stop bullets?" The small leader was speechless, thinking the boss had some brilliant idea. Then he saw King Byung pound his chest with his fists, making a thumping sound. "Can't muscles do it?" The small leader didn't dare to argue. After all, the boss must have thought he could do it. HMPH, King Byung snorted coldly, thinking back to the clues he had just found. In just a moment, he found the murderer. "I know," King Byung said, "the murderer is Wolverine." "Huh?" The small leader was stunned. He didn't know how King Byung came to this conclusion. Although it was well known that Wolverine's bones were made of adamantium and were indeed strong, the situation at the scene didn't match up. And Wolverine hadn't been seen in decades, hadn't he? The small leader tried to remind him, "Boss, if it was Wolverine's claws, there should be 3 bloody marks on the body. I told you you're stupid, but you still don't admit it." Kingpin's amazing wisdom was instantly activated. Can't Wolverine just extend one claw? His reasoning was impeccable, and Kingpin was full of confidence. Because on the way here, He had received intelligence that Hawkeye and Wolverine appeared in Hammerfall. That can't be wrong. It must be Wolverine. As the night deepened, the spider chariot sped through the wilderness, rushing to Kingpin's lair. "Don't worry, I'll rush in alone, you just need to support me outside." Hawkeye drove the car with Logan and Bruce, his tone of indescribable relief and pleasure. "I really didn't expect that kid Ashley would call herself a superhero to fight Kingpin. Good, good. I'm happy to be her father." At this moment, Hawkeye had no idea that his daughter did not want to get rid of Kingpin, but wanted to be the next Kingpin. The spider chariot was very fast and soon arrived outside the arena. According to the intelligence of the 8th generation of Ultron, Esley's partner will be executed here tonight. The arena was brightly lit and noisy at this time. The execution had obviously begun. Hawkeye motioned Logan and Bruce to wait in the car, and then he packed his equipment by himself and approached the arena. Katoom watched all the way, wondering whether he should make a bet with Bruce on whether Hawkeye could come back. Hawkeye felt the changes in the outside world and moved to the edge of the arena step by step. The cheers and noise in the arena were deafening, and Hawkeye's hearing, which we relied on, was greatly affected at this time. Laugh, just laugh. Hawkeye held his breath and squatted outside the stadium, recalling the skills taught to him by the old Daredevil, searching for the sound he wanted among the countless noises. However, he found nothing. Not only that, he began to have a vague feeling. Why did the sound in the arena sound so wrong? It didn't sound like a fanatical shout from the heart, but more like acting. No. Suddenly, Hawkeye's alarm bells rang, and crisis and shame filled his heart at the same time. This sense of crisis came from his realization that he had fallen into a trap. And the sense of shame came from the fact that he had fallen into Kingpin's trap. Chapter 60. What does saving you have to do with you? Hawkeye's judgment was correct. The next moment, Kingpin's roar of laughter could be heard. He appeared above the arena, wearing a hip-hop style short-sleeved shirt, sunglasses, and a large gold chain. "Wolverine, I've been waiting for you for a long time." "Huh? Why is it you?" He suddenly realized that the person who came was not Wolverine, but Hawkeye. Never mind, Hawkeye is Hawkeye. As long as he could capture one person, his plan would be a success. Although it was difficult to explain why he went to such trouble to put on a show when he had so many subordinates, Kingpin was very satisfied with his plan. He leaped up and landed heavily on the ground, causing it to tremble. At the same time, a long arrow flew through the air, and Hawkeye took action. The moment he realized he had fallen into a trap, he was already in combat mode. Kingpin did not dodge or avoid, letting the arrow fly. The arrow hit his body, but suddenly bounced off, not penetrating at all. Kingpin's body has been trained to the extreme, and his muscles are his best defense. Ho-ha-ho-ha. Times have changed, old man, Kingpin strained, his muscles bulging. "Today, I'll show you what perfect muscles look like." However, Hawkeye simply shook his head calmly. "I won't see," Kingpin, startled, shouted. "You must see." Hawkeye removed his sunglasses, revealing his glaucoma. "I'm blind." "Oh," Kingpin nodded, "but there was no other way." "Then you can choose not to see, but you'll still die." In the distance, Logan and Bruce both saw Hawkeye's current predicament. "Should we go save him?" Bruce asked. Logan remained silent, sitting in the driver's seat, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, his gaze fixed on Hawkeye's direction. But he showed no sign of wanting to help. Katoom sighed helplessly from Bruce's shoulder. "Bruce, I'm afraid you're the only one who hasn't seen clearly yet." "What do you mean?" Bruce didn't understand what the owl was saying. "Don't you realize that these two old men are essentially here to die?" Katoom said. "Hawkeye wants to burn himself, Logan wants to make some money and disappear from the world. Ever since Professor X's death, their life goals have simply been to die a good death." These words were truly difficult for Bruce to comprehend. At 12 years old, he had witnessed death and understood the preciousness of life, so he couldn't imagine anyone setting their own death as their goal. "Why is that?" Bruce glanced at Hawkeye in the distance. Due to the distance, he could only see a tiny dot. "Because of despair," Katoom said. "You were born in Gotham. I thought you'd be familiar with this place." Bruce lowered his head and thought for a long time before looking up. "But being killed by the Kingpin here wouldn't be a worthwhile death, would it?" "Indeed," Katoom didn't argue. "But now the world is about to end. Even if Hawkeye survives, he'll still have to face the same fate." Katoom had long ago reminded Bruce that if the world is destined to end, nothing can change it. To make it more entertaining and educational, Katoom had even used the example of the Flash, leaving Bruce stunned. Bruce hadn't understood why the Flash persisted despite repeated failures. Now he understood a little. Even though he knew nothing could be changed, Bruce couldn't bear to see it through. Knowing failure meant not starting, was that right? Bruce suddenly looked up, perhaps understanding why Katoom had been so insistent. I'm going to save him, Bruce made his decision. Whether he lives or dies is his business, whether I save him is my business. He wouldn't be Bruce Wayne if he turned a blind eye to the weak in need. Saving you, what business is it of yours? Meanwhile, Hawkeye and Kingpin had already begun their battle. Hawkeye was helpless against the muscular Kingpin, whose body had been trained to perfection. His bow and arrows were powerless, and his swordsmanship was mere show. Kingpin had an overwhelming advantage, and was on the verge of crushing Hawkeye to death. In the distance, Logan's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Damn it, he knew the situation was forcing him to act. If he waited any longer, Hawkeye would truly die. Uncle Logan, Bruce suddenly leaned over from the back seat. How long are you going to wait? Logan persisted. I told you I won't do anything. You don't need to, Bruce suddenly declared. Just drive, I'll take care of the rest. Logan was stunned. He hadn't expected such words from a child. On Bruce's spirited face, he vaguely saw his former mutant companions. Hurry, or it'll be too late. Logan gritted his teeth. All right, he revved the engine, and the spider vehicle roared off, speeding towards Hawkeye. Kingpin was still enjoying the fight when he saw Red Chariot hurtling towards him. The driver was none other than Wolverine. You dare? Kingpin was about to utter a harsh word when a child, about 12 years old, stood up from the back seat of the chariot. Bruce drew his supreme wand and pointed it at Kingpin. As the levitation spell was cast, Kingpin suddenly lost control of his body, his feet lifted off the ground and suspended in midair. Seizing this opportunity, Logan grabbed Hawkeye and flung him back onto the chariot. The spider car began to move away from the arena. We have to deal with Kingpin, Hawkeye began, but Bruce interrupted. Get the target straight. You're here to save your daughter, not kill Kingpin. The chariot sped toward where Ashley was being held, with Kingpin's men in pursuit. Some ran, some rode motorcycles, and one even transformed into a dinosaur rider, a swift velociraptor at the helm. Kingpin himself had also freed himself from his levitation and was riding a Tyrannosaurus Rex, giving chase. Bruce stood in the back of the chariot, waving the supreme wand. Petrification, with each wave of his wand, another person fell to the ground. This efficiency left Hawkeye and Logan stunned. This kid is far more powerful than I thought. As the spider car sped away, the group retreated from the arena. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the corner of the duel arena. It was Deathstroke. There was a bag at his hand, which was filled with something unknown. Deathstroke looked at the smoke and dust in the distance, his eyes under the helmet thoughtful. Bruce used a method he had never seen before. Is it because of the short stick in his hand? Deathstroke recalled the scene of Bruce's battle just now, when the other party was waving a wand and there was an owl beside him. This is interesting. Although bats and owls are entangled, they rarely stand in the same camp. For such a situation to occur, there is obviously a problem. Don't be careless, Deathstroke murmured. It seems that before catching Wayne, we need to consider dealing with his short stick and getting rid of the owl. Chapter 61. You have known Barbatos for a long time, right? The spider chariot raced towards the Kingpin's base. The pursuers behind had been mostly eliminated, even Kingpin himself, struck by Bruce's petrification spell and thrown from his Tyrannosaurus Rex. Bruce shook his head mentally as he thought of that scene. How could evil muscles withstand his righteous magic? Finally, the chariot slammed into a building. "Ali, Daddy's here," Hawkeye shouted from the chariot, trying to get a response from his daughter. But when the chariot actually entered the building, what was inside utterly shocked them. Blood, the entire building, Kingpin's lair, was stained with blood. Countless bodies lay on the ground, faces etched with terror, eyes wide open, as if they had witnessed an unimaginably horrific scene before their death. Hawkeye froze in his place. Endless panic washed over him, the smell of blood all around him almost completely overwhelmed him. Upon inspection, it was discovered that all the men had been stabbed in the throat with a single blow. Such a method was not something Ashley could have done. If it were Ashley, she would have chosen to smash someone's head. The Kingpin building was broken into from outside, and then an indiscriminate massacre was carried out. If that was the case, what happened to Ashley? Hawkeye couldn't bear to think about it anymore. He jumped out of the car and rushed into the building alone. He wanted to find his daughter. Ugh, Bruce retched, lying next to the car. It was the first time he had ever seen such a massacre, and it was a huge shock to him both physically and mentally. Owl patted him on the back, saying, "It's okay. You'll get used to it after a few more times." A desperate cry came from the depths of the building. It was Hawkeye's voice. What had happened was self-evident. Logan's face was gloomy, and he pulled his hat down to block his eyes, as if he too was grieving for his old friend. Even Katoom felt a little sorry for Hawkeye. In this world, you can't expect a happy ending. Hawkeye was the perfect example. Failure to save Ashley left Hawkeye bereaved in his old age, a tragedy for a young man to see his daughter die. But if he rescued Ashley, and her daughter tried to kill him to establish their authority, Hawkeye would be devastated to see Ashley's true face. Either way, Hawkeye would experience nothing but pain. Katoom sighed. At least for now, Hawkeye still thinks his daughter died a hero. That's a bit of luck, isn't it? Bruce didn't reply. He had slowly adjusted to the scene, his retching gradually easing. Then a question struck him. Who did this? Bruce suddenly asked. Could it be one of Kingpin's enemies, seeking revenge on this very day? Bruce felt a pervasive sense of danger. It was a feeling, like the one he'd felt when he first met Jason, a magical intuition. Batsense. Bruce could vaguely sense a terrifying presence, slowly approaching. I don't know who it was, but there's no doubt it was Barbatos' pursuers. Katoom looked around. This cold-blooded, ruthless killing reminded him of many people. Lazile Ogu, Claw, Mr. Zhass. This time, I'm afraid we have to assume the worst, Katoom said solemnly. Let's start with the opponent, temporarily call him Deathstroke. Deathstroke. Bruce didn't know how dangerous this person was, but he was certain of one thing. There were only wrong names, not wrong nicknames. Anyone called Deathstroke was no ordinary person. Katoom, I've always been curious. At this moment, Bruce suddenly expressed the question that had been lingering in his mind for a long time. How exactly did Barbatos send people here? I mean, he couldn't even get here himself, yet he could send people here, and he always accurately found our world. I don't know, Katoom said. No, you do, Bruce retorted. You knew there would be pursuers from the first day we crossed over. I don't know, Katoom repeated. But Bruce remembered more suspicious points. I followed the ancient texts and found the location where Barbatos was sealed, but when the seal was finally broken, it was you who flew out. Bruce asked, Katoom, have you known Barbatos for a long time? What's your story with him? Well, since you've asked, I won't hide it from you. Katoom suddenly had a nostalgic look on his face. A long, long time ago? Come on, stop making up stories. Bruce suddenly sighed. You don't want to tell me the truth. I can only interpret it as you don't trust me right now. It's okay, we'll talk later. He knew he couldn't get the truth out of Katoom right now, he wasn't strong enough. And Bruce didn't want to doubt the owl. He'd learned his lesson from doubting Dumbledore. Overly paranoid suspicions only led to disastrous consequences. Bruce didn't ask further, but he still muttered to himself, but is there a possibility that you were once captured by Barbatos and have a very humiliating history? Katoom's eyes widened. You fucking, this was outrageous. Could you, Bruce, say such things without batting an eyelid? Katoom had already begun mourning Bruce's future enemies. The Batman they were about to face would likely be far from righteous. They entered the building and found Hawkeye, grieving. He was clutching his daughter's body, wailing and weeping. Logan crouched beside his old friend, patting his shoulder, silent. Katoom glanced around and noticed something fishy about the room. This isn't a prison cell, he said. Look at the layout. It looks like the Kingpin's vault. Indeed, scattered around were numerous gold bars and other collectibles too large to carry away. Now, things became much clearer. During the invasion, Ashley had a chance to escape, but she chose not to. Instead, she fled to the Kingpin's vault, hoping to exploit the situation. Unfortunately, her and the enemy's targets coincided, and their encounter led to Leslie's tragic end. How pitiful, Katoom sighed indifferently, then flew around the vault a few times. Sure enough, he discovered something. He only took small, valuable items. His goal was clear, he took them and left without further delay. True to Deathstroke's style, before capturing Bruce, he first gathered funds and formulated a plan. This wasn't something a typical villain could do. Katoom landed on the ground, facing a helmet. It belonged to Magneto. Unfortunately, Deathstroke is interlocal, and his judgment of the item's value was incorrect. Katoom picked up the helmet and stuffed the feathers inside. As for the rest, I'll have to bear the pain and accept it. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62 Metal Prelude. Magneto's helmet, while seemingly unremarkable on the outside, possesses the power to completely shield against psychic intrusion. Katoom has always been curious about its material and how it works. Now that it's in his possession, he'll have Bruce study it, giving his batsuit an extra function. After putting the helmet away, two other items caught Katoom's attention. First, a diamond-shaped slab of stone. Covered in ancient hieroglyphics, a single eye was depicted at the very top. Katoom didn't recognize it at first glance, but after some searching, he finally remembered what it was. It's the Tablet of Life. The slab belongs to a Marvel villain named Silvermane. He discovered the secret to rejuvenation from the slab and kidnapped Dr. Kurt Connors. Using the slab's contents, he created a youth serum. Kurt Connors is Spider-Man's classic villain, Professor Lizard. A slab that can restore youth is undoubtedly invaluable. Kingpin likely couldn't decipher its meaning, so he abandoned it in the vault. Katoom put it away without hesitation. The slate was now his. If he could decipher its contents, he would have the old man at Hogwarts test the potion's effects. After putting the slate away, the last thing Katoom noticed was an egg. It was enormous, even larger than Katoomba's own. Remembering the dinosaurs Kingpin had raised, Katoomba had reason to suspect it was a dinosaur egg. He just didn't know why it was placed in the vault. Adhering to the principle of better to take it by mistake than to let it go, Katoomba put the egg away. He could ask Hagrid to incubate it later and see what it could produce. If it was just an ordinary dinosaur, he could give it to Hagrid as a gift. He had always wanted to raise a dragon, and a dinosaur was a dragon. But just as Katoomba was putting the egg away, Bruce finally lost his temper. It was enough that the owl had always stuffed strange things into its feathers, but now this egg was clearly bigger than the owl itself. And how could he even stuff feathers? Katoon, Bruce thought for a moment, then spoke carefully. As far as I know, female owls incubate eggs, and this isn't an owl egg. What nonsense are you talking about? Katoon frowned. Of course I know it's not an owl egg, then you. Bruce hesitated, thinking for a moment, then finally kept his mouth shut. Bruce knew full well that Katoon had used the untraceable extension charm to transform the feather into a storage space. But no matter what, the object was still on Katoon's person, not in another dimension. Bruce wanted to ask Katoon, if you store an egg and feathers close to your body like this, what will you do if something actually hatches? Back to the other side. Hawkeye hugged his daughter, tears dry as tears ran down his face, yet he still couldn't recover from the grief. He was filled with endless regret. If he had come earlier, perhaps the tragedy wouldn't have happened. Logan crouched beside him, pressing his shoulder, speechless. After a long moment, Hawkeye finally came to his senses, wiped away his tears, and walked out of the vault, carrying his daughter's body. Despite his grief, he had to continue on his journey. Bruce followed, unable to resist asking Katoom, "Do you know who the murderer is?" Hawkeye can't possibly not want to avenge his daughter. I can't say. Katoom shook his head as he soared through the air. Whoever it is, I just hope it's not Deathstroke. Why? Bruce demanded. You've been mentioning Deathstroke's name for a while now. Is he truly terrifying? Whether he's terrifying or not is secondary. The key is his armor. Bruce was puzzled. What's wrong with the armor? Katoom thought for a moment before revealing the truth. Deathstroke's armor is made of promethium. Promethium is one of the 5 metals in the Great Metal Event, alongside Dionysus Factor, Amber Gold, Bat Metal, and Nth Metal. If all 5 metals were present in Bruce's body, it would open the portal to the dark multiverse, allowing Barbatos and his men to descend directly upon him. Jason's last pursuit brought the Dionysus Factor. Now, if the second pursuer also brought another metal, Katoom would have to suspect that Barbatos was up to something. Promethium. Bruce muttered the metal's name silently, then asked, what abilities do these 5 metals possess? The Dionysus Factor possesses the powers of resurrection, immortality, and self-healing, but what about the others? That's a bit difficult to explain. Each metal doesn't have just one ability. Katoom offered a simple summary, Not entirely accurate, but easy for Bruce to remember. The Dionysus factor grants immortality and self-healing, while Electrum grants eternal youth. In other words, one is immortal, the other is ageless. Then, nth metal can subvert magic and gravity, and is commonly used to craft armor, magical defenses, and flight. Bat gold is the perfect spellcasting material, possessing immense magical power. Finally, promethium is indestructible and can withstand massive physical and energy attacks. It's commonly used in weapons and armor. After saying this, Katoom himself felt a little emotional. These 5 metals are extremely rare and precious materials when taken individually, but when the 5 are put together, plus a Batman, they will become the door to the dark universe and become the most unlucky thing in the entire universe. If possible, let Bruce stay away from these things. Of course, we don't have to worry so much. At the end, Katoom laughed and said, "The person who comes may not be Deathstroke, and we probably won't encounter promethium metal." You can't say that. Bruce didn't buy it. All was planned for the worst possible scenario. Didn't you tell me that? Okay, Katoom had to admit that Bruce had indeed grown a lot. They followed Hawkeye out, boarded the spider chariot, and returned to Hammerfall. The story that followed was naturally very heavy. Hawkeye went to save his daughter, but in the end he only brought back her body. No matter how sad he was still blamed and scolded by his ex-wife Toya. In great sorrow, Hawkeye led them out of Hammerfall and continued on to the new utopia. The spider chariot rushed to the former Mount Rushmore. The portraits of 4 presidents, Washington, Jefferson, Roosevelt, and Lincoln, were carved into the mountain. In addition, there was a 5th president who was newly carved, and his portrait was so large that it completely surpassed the previous 4. He was the current president, Red Skull. As the chariot passed Mount Rushmore, Hawkeye's blind eyes stared accurately in the direction of the Red Skull's head. A trace of determination flashed across his face. "Red Skull, wait for me." Chapter 63 The Invincible He dies again. Hawkeye never revealed the specifics of his feud with Red Skull. The truth behind the Avengers' destruction remains unrevealed. This is Hawkeye's secret, one he seems reluctant to share. The journey is now halfway over, and they'll soon reach New Utopia. But now, the group has run into a bit of trouble. A Tyrannosaurus Rex, over 10 meters long, is relentlessly pursuing the spider vehicle. Hawkeye has floored the accelerator, but still can't shake it off. Is it the Kingpin's pursuers? Not likely. Bruce prefers to believe they've simply provoked a wild Tyrannosaurus Rex. "I've been wanting to ask this for a long time," Bruce said from the back seat, glancing back at the Tyrannosaurus. Where did all these dinosaurs come from? Even if America had become a wasteland, there was no reason for extinct dinosaurs to appear. "What's your beef with dinosaurs?" Katoom turned his head and gazed back with Bruce. "Technically, I'm a dinosaur too. Birds are descendants of dinosaurs." As the two chattered, the Tyrannosaurus Rex behind them began to undergo a strange transformation. A black substance, resembling oil, began to spread across the T-Rex, as if possessing a life force, quickly enveloping it. Symbiote, Katoom recognized the substance's true nature. Meanwhile, Hawkeye finally understood why they were being targeted. "So that's how it is," he said. "A few years ago, I burned a bunch of symbiotes, and it seems I didn't burn them all." Hawkeye hadn't gotten over the pain of losing his daughter, but he knew he didn't have time to grieve right now. There were more important things to do. So he suppressed his grief, and for now, everything seemed normal. Unless Hawkeye could see his daughter's killer. Meanwhile, upon hearing Hawkeye's explanation, Logan cursed. "Damn it, you've implicated us." "Then I apologize," Hawkeye said lightly. "Now is not the time for accusations. The most important thing is to escape." Logan's eyes widened. "You're such a talker. There's no accusation. Aren't we all blaming you?" The chariot sped along, unable to shake off the symbiote Tyrannosaurus Rex behind it. The distance between them was closing, and it looked as if they were about to be caught up. Hawkeye suddenly turned his head toward Logan. "Logan, I'm glad to have you on this journey. We only have one solution now. It might resolve our crisis, but it requires a small sacrifice on your part." "Shut up," Logan cursed, unwilling to listen. He could probably guess what Hawkeye was planning. He wanted the Tyrannosaurus Rex to devour Logan, and then Logan would use his healing powers to regenerate within the symbiote's stomach before bursting out. "I'm telling you, don't even think about it." Logan felt sick at the mere thought of that scenario. He wouldn't attack, even if his opponent was just a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Hawkeye whistled. That's not it. It's my honor to die with you. It's a pity for Bruce, he's just a child. Bruce frowned. He didn't hear any tension in Hawkeye's voice, as if the problem had been solved. Perhaps Hawkeye has a backup plan? Bruce's movement to draw was once slowed at this thought. Sure enough, just after turning a corner, a figure appeared on the road ahead of them. Standing in front, clad in a black battle suit and draped in a cape, his presence reminded Bruce of Batman. Hawkeye seemed to have known about this figure, having steered around him. As the chariot passed him, Hawkeye put two fingers together in a salute. Please. Black Bolt, Black Bolt? Bruce heard the name, and before he could react, Katoom whispered in his ear. How dare you, the owl said. You only dare to call yourself Batman, and he dares to call himself Black Bolt. He's clearly trying to outdo you. Can you tolerate that? What the hell was going on? Bruce didn't want to hear any more of the owl's nonsense. The chariot had already driven behind Black Bolt, and the symbiote dinosaur was in front. Black Bolt raised his head calmly and suddenly spoke. You can't pass. Boom. Instantly, a massive sonic energy surged out, ripping the symbiote into countless pieces. The massive Tyrannosaurus Rex exploded and perished. A bloody rain fell from the sky, and Black Bolt stood amidst it, like a slayer from hell. Good job, Black Bolt, Katoom suddenly began to scream. You're far better than that bat. I've been your fan for 50 years. Bruce silently covered the owl's mouth, the sound of it deeply irritating. Bruce and his companions followed Black Bolt into a secluded building, almost blending in with the wilderness. A stunning woman in a tight white battlesuit, with a voluptuous figure, sat in the uppermost seat of the hall. Emma, Hawkeye called out the woman's name enthusiastically. Behind him, Logan frowned, his eyes filled with unspeakable disgust. Emma Frost, a mutant codenamed the White Queen, possessed telepathic powers and the ability to transform her body into diamond. Ignoring Hawkeye, Emma greeted Logan instead. Logan looked the White Queen over with a stern look. 50 years have passed, and you haven't aged at all. Telepathy, Logan, the White Queen said with a faint smile. I can make others see what I want them to see. She was certainly old. But she used her telepathic powers to prevent everyone from seeing anything but her former beauty. Except for Katoom. Furthermore, Katoom, taking matters into his own hands, pulled Magneto's helmet from beneath his feathers and placed it on Bruce's head. In an instant, Bruce felt like the protagonist in The Shining, watching a beautiful young woman transform into an emaciated old woman, wearing exaggerated makeup. Bruce tried his best to remain nonchalant. At this time, the White Queen was still talking to Logan and the others. So, what exactly do you want to do by passing through my territory? Just passing through, Logan said lightly. We'll leave soon. In Logan's eyes, the White Queen was still as stunning as ever. Her eyes flickered, and she glanced at Hawkeye beside Logan, and chuckled. Why, Clint, you still haven't given up on that ridiculous idea? You still want to snatch Galactus' head from Red Skull? Suddenly, Katoom sat up straight on Bruce's shoulder. What's going on? Did he hear correctly? The invincible Galactus died again? Chapter 64 Hawkeye's Law of Causality. Clint, what's going on? Logan asked with a sullen face. You've never told me anything about this. This was the first time he'd heard anything about Galactus. Hawkeye had previously been practically tight-lipped. Shouldn't you give us an explanation? Calm down, Logan. Hawkeye gestured for Logan to calm down. It's not too late to tell us now. I don't intend to drag you into this. Calm down, calm down. He paused for a moment, then composed his words and began to explain the situation to Logan and Bruce. Galactus had suddenly appeared 10 years ago. As Hawkeye explained, Katoom gradually understood the whole story. Furthermore, based on the known comic book plot, he could make further connections. In fact, this Galactus didn't belong to Galactus of this time, but rather came from the future. The story of the Sunset Red universe consists of 3 parts, starring the aging Hawkeye, the aging Logan, and the aging Star-Lord. The story of the Sunset Red universe takes place 5 years ago, following Hawkeye's quest for revenge for his former teammates after learning he was about to lose his sight. The Avengers were wiped out by the Thunderbolts' betrayal, so the aging Hawkeye single-handedly killed all the Thunderbolts survivors, including Bullseye and Baron Zemo, avenging his teammates. Dusk Wolf's story is set in the present. Finally, there's the aging Star-Lord. 5 years later, the invincible Galactus and his Universal Church of Truth invade Earth, and the aging Star-Lord averts this crisis. Star-Lord resolves the situation by shooting Galactus in the head, sparking a profound shift in his mind. The bullet he fired was a fragment of the Time Stone. While killing Galactus, this fragment carried his head back 15 years. Galactus's mind shifted to confusion. After returning to the past, his head fell into the hands of the Red Skull. Galactus, in a different light, suffered a tragic fate. Despite his preeminent position, his combat power was erratic. He feeds on the life energy of planets, reaching infinite power with a full stomach. The problem is, he can't get enough. As a result, he's often reduced to a mere unit of combat power, having died countless times throughout the history of the Marvel Universe. Poor Galactus. What could he possibly eat? Katoom sighed. It's not enough to be killed, but after death, his head and body will be separated. Even his coffin will have to be packed separately. Bruce glanced at Owl, confused by his perpetually bizarre thinking. Hawkeye continued his narration. The god's head is enormous, even larger than an average building, and it contains special powers. When Red Skull obtained it, he saw a vision of the future. He didn't see himself in that future vision, and from then on, Red Skull knew that if he died in the future, he would be killed in 15 years at most. He refused to accept this fate, so he embarked on a mad plan. Hawkeye paused, then continued. He planned to transform Galactus's head into a weapon capable of annihilation. Only then would no one be able to kill him. Hearing this, Logan asked, "How do you know all this?" Hawkeye didn't hide it. "You must have seen the reports in the newspapers before, about Red Skull labeling a region as rebels and then indiscriminately wiping them out." Logan and Bruce nodded, having indeed seen it. "Those who were wiped out were once my teammates." Hawkeye finally revealed the answer, his voice lowered. "They were great. They exposed Red Skull's conspiracy and vowed to stop it. Unfortunately, they were a step too late. Red Skull took action first. This was why Hawkeye had come to Logan, saying he had something important to do." Katoom frowned at Hawkeye, a sense of foreboding. No matter which universe, Hawkeye had a certain sense of causality. In the MCU, Hawkeye repeatedly sets his sights on his impending doom. But in Avengers Endgame, Quicksilver dies while saving him, and in Avengers Endgame, Natasha also dies while saving him. And as for Hawkeye himself, even after defeating Thanos, he's still alive and kicking, even finding time to take on an apprentice and enjoy a life of retirement. In this universe, Hawkeye maintains this trait. The Avengers and the rebels against the Red Skull, all once Hawkeye's teammates, were ruthlessly annihilated. Yet, Hawkeye himself stands before them, alive and well. It's absurd. Katoom now faces a dilemma. Will this kind of annihilation happen a third time? Now, they are Hawkeye's teammates. Katoom whispers, "Hawkeye, Hawkeye, you're the most unlucky person in all of Marvel, huh?" Bruce is puzzled. Katoom doesn't explain. He's confident, and the worst that can happen is that he'll lead Bruce to victory. As long as they turn quickly enough, danger would always be one step behind them. When Hawkeye finished recounting Red Skull's plot, Logan had fallen silent. He began to realize the sheer danger of what Hawkeye was about to do, and he feared he was already prepared to leave without a chance to return. "Hawkeye," Logan looked at his old friend, as if about to say something. But after a long silence, he sighed, "Good luck to you. I've already said, I'll never do anything again. It's okay, I understand." Hawkeye was unfazed, not pressing Logan's help. They rested briefly at the White Queen's base before preparing to continue their journey. Just as they were about to leave, White Queen Emma stopped Logan. Though she looked old to Bruce, she looked young and beautiful to Logan. It felt a bit like American Horror Story. "Logan," the White Queen asked with a smile, "have you found the life you want? Do you feel you belong?" Logan looked at the mutant traitor with a sullen expression. He didn't answer directly, but said, "You can read my mind and see for yourself." The White Queen looked at Logan silently. No one knew if she had read Logan's mind, but in the end, a satisfied smile crossed her face. "That's wonderful." The spider chariot set off again. This time, Logan was driving, while Hawkeye sat in the passenger seat to rest. In the backseat, Katoom stared at Hawkeye, as if trying to discern the power of cause and effect from him. Would Hawkeye really be wiped out along with them? As if sensing a gaze from behind, Hawkeye turned and smiled at Bruce, thinking it was Bruce looking at him. Speaking of Bruce, what a good boy. Though young, he had the heart to be a hero and protect others. Unconsciously, Hawkeye thought of his daughter, Ashley. She had also died a hero. Hawkeye pulled a mechanical watch from his arms, a relic from Ashley's body, which he had kept as a memento. He stroked the watch, missing his daughter. But as he rubbed it, he suddenly noticed something amiss. Hawkeye discovered a hidden component in the strap of the mechanical watch. He used his fingers to determine what it was. Why does this look like a bug? Chapter 65 The President. Sizzle. Logan slammed on the brakes, the spider chariot's tires scraping a long track across the ground. What bug? Logan turned to look at the object in Hawkeye's hand. It was a tiny part, so small that Hawkeye wouldn't have noticed it if he hadn't felt it out. It might have been planted by one of Ashley's rivals, Hawkeye said, feeling sad as he crushed the bug. That kid is so careless. He didn't even know he was being bugged. Sigh, no wonder Ashley was eventually captured by the Kingpin. Hawkeye and Logan paid no attention to the bug, naturally assuming it wasn't aimed at them. The two old men didn't have any secrets, so what was there to eavesdrop on? Only Katoom, upon seeing the bug, realized something was amiss. Something was amiss. The technology in this bug was too advanced for this world. Ashley, a small-time thug, couldn't possibly have provoked such an opponent. Katoom, Bruce hooted, realizing something was amiss. To assume the worst, the bug wasn't planted by Ashley's opponent. It was planted by Ashley's killer. Katoom's heart sank. After killing his enemy, he'd even considered planting a bug on her. Such meticulousness, coupled with his previously displayed prowess. This time, the pursuers might really be Deathstroke. Katoom began to think about what Deathstroke could have learned from them. The answer was obvious. Regarding the secrets Hawkeye had shared about Galactus and the Red Skull. If it were Deathstroke, what would he do after learning this? Katoom began to put himself in Deathstroke's shoes, considering the consequences. Although Deathstroke was hunting Bruce, he wouldn't act rashly until he had a satisfactory plan. So, when he did, it must have been with absolute confidence. Katoom looked up helplessly at Hawkeye. Was the law of causality in the sky about to kick in again? The new utopia was drawing ever closer. Bruce and his crew arrived at the long-celebrated Ant-Man crossroads. Immediately, they saw the skeleton of a gigantic creature, stretched across the intersection. This was the remains of Ant-Man, the remains of Ant-Man after his death. The sight deeply shocked Logan and Bruce, and they finally understood the meaning of the place's name. Because two roads intersected beneath the remains, the place was named Ant-Man Crossroads. Ant-Man was a veteran of the Avengers, and Hawkeye hadn't explained why before because he couldn't bring himself to do so. As they passed Ant-Man Crossroads, Logan removed his hat and observed a moment of silence. The atmosphere in the car was momentarily heavy, the only sound being the roar of the tank's engines. After passing Ant-Man Crossroads, the silhouette of a magnificent city loomed before them, a new utopia. As the tank drove in, Logan was stunned by the city's prosperity. As expected of the President's city, even 50 years ago, it still looked every bit as magnificent as it did. In the heart of New Babylon stands a colossal statue of the great President Red Skull. His left hand raised, he grasps countless former enemies. New Babylon belongs entirely to Red Skull. Inside New Babylon's presidential palace, Red Skull stands in his own showroom, quietly admiring his collection. Before him lies a massive display case filled with relics of the superheroes who have opposed him over the past 50 years. Iron Man's suit, Doctor Strange's cape, Spider-Man's mask, Thor's helmet. At the very top of the display case sits a round shield emblazoned with a star. This shield belongs to Red Skull's former nemesis, Captain America. 50 years ago, the White House burned. Captain America lay on the ground, powerless to resist. With his hands behind his back, Red Skull gazed upon the spiritual leader of the superheroes, feeling a surge of immense pleasure. If I'd known you were so vulnerable, I should have united all the villains long ago. The Red Skull looked down at Captain America. From now on, this country belongs to us. I will carve up the America you love so deeply and give it to my men. They are all heinous criminals. I believe that once they occupy our territory, they will bring endless humiliation to this once beautiful country. Steve, how are you feeling now? Captain America no longer had the strength to speak, tears streaming down his face. Don't hope for a miracle. Not even the gods can reverse the outcome of this battle, for they are not here. The Red Skull spoke, slowly approaching Captain America. Don't be afraid. It will be quick. He pressed his thumbs to Captain America's eyes. Then, with a sudden force, transformed by the serum, he unleashed his immense strength, far superior to that of an ordinary human. Captain America screamed in agony as the Red Skull crushed his head. Time flashed back to the present. On the Red Skull's face, Captain America's former mask was clearly visible. Not only that, he was wearing Captain America's suit, ripped from his opponent's body, an authentic replica. The cowl was stained with blood, its color aged. Red Skull hadn't even washed it in 50 years. Red Skull's ancestors would skin their enemies after they killed them, and by donning Captain America's suit, he was emulating them. If I were the me now, even in a fair fight with Steve, I could easily defeat him, Red Skull muttered to himself, his tone filled with endless satisfaction. I've surpassed that Captain America by a long shot. Who else in the world could be greater than him? He was lost in his own world, and it took a long time for him to regain his composure. The Galactus weapon had been successfully developed, and no one could kill him anymore. The future vision he had seen would never become reality. Never again. Never again. He, Red Skull, had become the strongest of the strong. But then, have you finished? A completely unfamiliar voice called out, a voice with a hint of mechanical reverberation. Red Skull got goosebumps all over his body. He turned around suddenly and saw a man standing in the corner of the showroom. He was wearing full tactical armor and a yellow and black mask. Deathstroke folded his hands on his chest and leaned quietly in the corner of the room. Who are you? Red Skull asked loudly. How did you get in? He had been in for a long time and he didn't even notice it. The president, who had just claimed to be the strongest, was now in a huge panic. Insecurity completely surrounded him, and Red Skull's hands and feet were cold. Don't worry, I'm just here to discuss a deal with you, Deathstroke said softly. What deal? I need some of your resources as president. Deathstroke slowly approached Red Skull. In exchange, you can get my gratitude. Chapter 66. If you are confused, don't set out. Your thanks. Red Skull felt as if he had just heard the world's funniest joke. How the hell did you get in here? Even as he spoke, Red Skull had already begun his own actions. He suddenly reached out, shattered the glass of the display case, and pulled out the sword in the stone, which had once belonged to Captain Britain. This divine weapon, capable of splitting the very walls of the universe, had long since become scrap metal due to its owner's death. Now, in Red Skull's hands, it was nothing more than a sharp blade. But that was enough. Red Skull twisted and swung his sword, intending to cut through his enemy's body, but just before the sword in the stone swung, a flash of cold light appeared, and the blade was already across Red Skull's neck. He drew his sword quickly, but unfortunately, Deathstroke was even faster. Don't be so unkind. Deathstroke applied a little force, the blade pressing into Red Skull's skin, oozing a few strands of blood. He said without emotion, put down the sword, let's talk. Red Skull's expression remained unchanged. As the president of a country, could a mere death threat intimidate him? The Red Skull had his own principles, and his was to value peace. With a clang, the sword in the stone was thrown to the ground. Deathstroke tipped his toes, and the sword flew up, landing in his hands. What a fine weapon! Deathstroke admired the sword and naturally put it behind his back. It was his now. Let's get back to the point, back to our earlier deal. Deathstroke retracted the sword. Don't feel humiliated, you'll have to thank me in the end. The Red Skull stepped back, clutching his neck, gasping for air. He had truly felt death just now. What do you want? The Red Skull's tone was unkind, tinged with fear. Money? Or territory? He just wanted to get rid of this guy as soon as possible, even if it meant heavy bleeding, as long as he could get rid of this plague. After that, he would deal with the incompetent security personnel in the presidential palace. Their beloved president was almost assassinated, and these people hadn't even noticed. Don't ask me what I want, Deathstroke, always in control of the conversation, said. You created a god-level weapon, hoping to save your own life. How did you know that? Red Skull thought of the rebels he had annihilated. Could there still be survivors? But as soon as he asked this question, another cold light flashed before his eyes. Before Red Skull even saw Deathstroke draw his sword, a bloody streak appeared on his face. Don't answer a question with a question. Deathstroke's patience was almost at its limit. You should have realized that this method is useless. For example, your life is in my hands right now. It was true. The weapon forged from Galactus's head was extremely powerful, but the price was its bulk, making it impossible to carry around. If Red Skull were assassinated at close range, the weapon would be useless. I can tell you how to deal with this problem. I can even tell you who wants to deal with you now. Seeing that Red Skull was hesitating, Deathstroke finally stated his terms of the deal. But in exchange, your next actions will be under my command. New Babylon, a bar. When Bruce and his group arrived at New Utopia, it was time to say goodbye. Hawkeye didn't intend to have anyone accompany him on his next move. They sat together, Hawkeye and Logan each with a large beer in front of them. Bruce was too young. So Hawkeye only ordered him a glass of juice, but Bruce refused to drink it, so he let Katoom suck the juice clean through a straw. We should say goodbye here. Hawkeye raised his beer in front of Logan, motioning for them to clink glasses. You still won't tell me what happened to you that made you decide not to fight again. Nothing to say, Logan toasted with Hawkeye, then downed his beer. He lit a cheap cigar, took a deep drag, and then blew out the smoke rings and sighed. Logan closed his eyes, and the painful memories surfaced before him. It's just a little bit of wind and frost. Although Logan said this, his voice was obviously wrong. Hawkeye shook his head and said softly, "Speak out, you're almost at your limit. If you keep suppressing the past in your heart, it will only crush you completely." Logan opened his eyes. "I can tell you everything." He looked at Bruce and warned him solemnly, "Kid, listen carefully. If you want to be a superhero, these will be your inescapable fate. If you are confused, don't embark on this path lightly." Then, Logan told a story that was like a nightmare. "Before it happened, I thought it was just an ordinary night." Logan leaned back in his chair and said slowly, "That night, an emergency alarm was sounded in Xavier's school for the gifted, and countless criminals invaded the school. In the face of these vicious criminals, he did not back down. The angry Logan stretched out his steel claws, and with a mentality of seeing death as the way home, he fought with those criminals. In order to protect the students, he kept killing, and his blood dyed his body red, until he killed the last invading criminal, Bullseye. This is impossible." Hawkeye suddenly found something wrong. "Bullseye lived until 5 years ago, and I killed him with my own hands. At that time, he had just lost his eyesight, and he started a final duel with Bullseye. Hawkeye aimed at Bullseye's heart, then shot him in the head and won. Yet, this can only mean that I didn't kill Bullseye." Logan's breathing became heavy, his body trembled, and his fists creaked. "Not only is Bullseye fake, but the other criminals are also fake. They are all hallucinations I saw." Tears streamed down Logan's face, though he didn't realize it. "The true identities of those criminals are all my teammates, and kids from the academy." Bruce was completely speechless upon hearing this. He couldn't imagine what kind of hell that scene would be like, destroying everything he wanted to protect with his own hands. If it were him, he would definitely collapse on the spot. "When I killed the last man, the illusion disappeared," Logan recalled painfully. "I saw Professor X lying in a pool of blood. His eyes were even more desperate than mine, because those illusions were all created by him. The mastermind behind all this was the criminal master of illusion, who used illusions to control Professor X, just like what happened in X-Men 2. On this night, the X-Men were wiped out, leaving only Professor X and Wolverine, their faith completely shattered. They know our abilities, and everything is carefully planned," Logan said. "If Professor X doesn't want to die, even if his body is destroyed, he can be resurrected in someone else's mind. But I can't die at all. That's why Professor X and I were chosen to be the executioners of this massacre." From that day on, the professor went completely mad, and I've lived in a daze until now. Logan took Hawkeye's beer and drank it again. After recounting the past, he felt relieved for the first time. "Bruce, think about this," Logan said finally. "When you become a hero and your enemies can't do anything to you, they'll turn on those around you. The path of a hero means eternal loneliness." Bruce said nothing. He didn't know if he could bear the price. The night gradually deepened. Bruce and his group prepared to leave the bar, and now they said goodbye. "I'm going to complete my mission," Hawkeye waved to them. "Logan, everything is over. You must move on. When I complete my mission, it will be like avenging you." The Red Skull was the main culprit behind this. Killing Red Skull would put an end to everything. After a final goodbye, Hawkeye turned and walked out the door. When he reached the street, he found it empty. "It feels so quiet, and there are no people from New Utopia on the streets," Hawkeye sighed in his heart, then collected his thoughts. "Next I have to work harder." Chapter 67 Who Dares to Kill Me? Logan and Bruce had already arrived outside the bar. They watched Hawkeye's back, knowing he had embarked on a path of no return. Bruce asked Katoom, "Is this the end of a hero?" A wave of sadness welled up in his heart, as if he had already seen his own future. However, This sadness didn't last long before something unexpected happened. A black car suddenly appeared at the intersection, the doors opening, and several men armed with machine guns emerged. Hawkeye immediately sensed something was wrong and rolled into the brush by the roadside. Logan instantly secured Bruce in his arms. Bang, 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 the machine gun fired in rapid succession, countless bullets pelting Logan's back. He grunted, his back stained red with blood. Logan, Bruce roared. It's okay, Logan gritted his teeth. Just a few bullets can't kill me. Even so, the pain on his face was unmistakable. At the same time, several hidden arrows whizzed out from the brush, accurately striking the criminals, taking their lives before they could react. The driver of the black car stepped on the accelerator and sped away without a backward glance. Hawkeye didn't emerge from the brush, still on guard for possible enemies. Logan stood tremblingly, gathering his strength and forcing the bullets from his back out one by one. We're being targeted, Logan, experienced in injuries, immediately made a decision. We need to leave now. This place is unsafe. No, too late, Bruce shook his head. He could already see more black cars approaching. The convoy stopped at the intersection, and Red Skull emerged from the front car. Seeing this man, Logan's brow furrowed sharply. The brush by the roadside swayed, clearly indicating Hawkeye's agitation. His target had dared to appear right in front of him. Right within Hawkeye's range. And at that moment, an incendiary bomb, coming at a desperate angle and at high speed, struck Katoom in the air. Gulp, Katoom let out a strange cry and plummeted from midair. Then he burst into flames, every feather stained with flame, as if he wouldn't stop until he was completely consumed. Katoom, Bruce's eyes blazed with blood. Logan's warning still rang in his ears, to be a hero, be prepared to lose those close to you. But Bruce hadn't expected it to happen so soon. Katoom, hold on, I can save you. Bruce immediately tried to summon a jet of water to extinguish Katoom's flames. The next moment, he heard Katoom's eerie cry, Bruce, I'm on fire. His voice was full of energy, not a hint of alarm. Furthermore, this guy could telepathically direct Bruce's actions. Don't cast wandless spells. Draw the supreme wand. Why? Bruce didn't understand Katoom's reasoning, but he drew his wand anyway. At that moment, a gunshot rang out from the other corner. The bullet pierced the air, striking Bruce's wand with pinpoint accuracy. The legendary supreme wand was instantly shattered in two. This, Bruce finally understood Katoom's intention. The enemy was coming for his wand. He looked in the direction of the gunshot and saw a figure appear on the rooftop. A single-eyed figure, beneath a yellow and black helmet, stared coldly at him. Bruce had no doubt it was Barbatos' pursuer. Katoom's helpless voice echoed in his ears, Alice, it's really Deathstroke. Can I guess wrong just once? The owl, covered in flames, flew to Bruce's side again. This sight made Deathstroke frown. Couldn't fire kill this owl? Never mind. A short stick would do if it could get rid of Bruce. In the brush, Hawkeye had already drawn his bow and arrow. He aimed at Red Skull's head, ready to deliver a fatal blow. Red Skull knew Hawkeye was in the brush, but he made no attempt to hide. Not only that, he laughed heartily. Hawkeye, you're aiming at me. With that, Red Skull rips open his uniform, revealing his chest. A sophisticated instrument beeped against it. Simultaneously, a distant rumbling sound echoed as a massive shadow rose from the ground and soared high into the sky. It was a massive head, as tall as 4 or 5 stories. Its ascent immediately captured everyone's attention. Reduced to mere bones, the skull gleamed with a transformed metallic sheen. 2 balls of high-density energy flames burned in its eye sockets. A planet-devouring weapon. Even though Hawkeye couldn't see the object, the sound told him something massive was soaring high into the sky. Red Skull said sinisterly, Hawkeye, I know you can't see, so I'll reluctantly explain it to you. The planet-devouring weapon is already high in the sky and charging. With just one command, it will activate at full power. Its power could easily destroy the entire Earth. As for the activation device, it's now tied to my heartbeat. At this point, the Red Skull finally laughed wildly. He was actually a little scared just now, because Hawkeye would attack him without waiting for him to explain clearly. That would not be good. In order to make Hawkeye listen to him, the Red Skull specially added a beeping sound to the device on his chest. Now there is finally no problem. Hawkeye, I know you have always wanted to kill me and then destroy the Star Devourer weapon. Now I'm standing in front of you. If you have the guts, do it. But I tell you, as soon as my heart stops beating, the Star Devourer weapon will immediately start at full power, and then the whole earth will have to be buried with me. This is the solution that Deathstroke gave to Red Skull. When the opponent is a self-proclaimed hero, you can use morality to kidnap them. Now that Red Skull is bound to the Galactus weapon, all the people on the earth have become his hostages. Who else dares to attack him? And everyone must pray that Red Skull will not have any accidents. Hawkeye's hand holding the bow and arrow trembled. He didn't expect the other party to do this. No wonder this guy is so confident and even dares to appear in front of him directly. Red Skull, you are so despicable. Hawkeye, don't you want to kill me? Come on, I'm here. Red Skull pulled his uniform and slowly approached Hawkeye's position. As expected, Hawkeye did not shoot the bow and arrow. This is why you superheroes are bound to lose, Red Skull sneered in his heart, always bound by a sense of morality, doing things timidly, unlike me, who moves forward. He tensed his muscles, bursting out with astonishing strength and speed, and came to Hawkeye, grabbed his neck and dragged him out. Hawkeye subconsciously wanted to resist, holding an arrow and stabbing Red Skull's throat. But when the arrow reached his throat, Hawkeye stopped. He couldn't kill Red Skull. Waste. Red Skull felt a little proud. The advice given by Deathstroke was really effective. No one would dare to offend him again. His future dead end was finally completely broken. Red Skull could mock the whole world now. Who dares to kill me? Who dares to kill me? Who dares to kill me? Quotation mark. Chapter 68, Hot Blood. Boom, a thunderous explosion echoed across the sky. The energy chaos caused by the Galactus weapon shifted the sky's color. The clear night sky was suddenly filled with dark clouds, and then the sky split open like countless cracks, and torrential rain gathered into a waterfall, pouring down in a single gust. In the torrential rain, Katoom's flames were extinguished, and countless white smoke filled the air. But the bird itself remained unharmed. Bruce, you only have one chance. Katoom flew beside Bruce, and Deathstroke emerged from the rain. Deathstroke now believes that if I break your wand, you'll be powerless. This is your chance. He created a non-existent weakness, deliberately giving his opponent a flaw. This was Bruce's chance to strike. But there was only one chance, a chance to sneak up on Deathstroke, and only one. Think carefully about the spell combination you're going to use to eliminate Deathstroke in one go, Bruce reminded Katoom in his ear. But don't stress too much. If you fail, I'll just take you out of this world. The owl had long emphasized that they were here to travel, not to be saviors. This world was destined for destruction, and it had nothing to do with them. Bruce remained unconvinced, focusing on the first half of Katoom's statement. Spell combination? Bruce had heard Professor Flitwick talk about this back at Hogwarts. It was a combat technique used in wizard duels. By linking different spells together, one could always maintain the initiative. Bruce quickly formulated the spell plan in his mind. First, use a levitation charm to levitate Deathstroke, then a freezing charm to freeze it in the rain, and finally a shattering charm. It was the most powerful spell combination he could muster. Bruce clenched his fists. He only had one chance. Deathstroke approached slowly, drawing the twin swords from his back. One was the sword in the stone, acquired from the Red Skull. This sacred weapon, reduced to scrap metal, now regained a modicum of its power in Deathstroke's hands. Rain poured down, but the moment it approached the blade, it seemed to be naturally severed by an invisible force, splitting in two. It was as if nature itself bowed to the sword's majesty. I don't like targeting children, but the reward offered by my employer is excessive. Deathstroke's gaze pierced Bruce's childish face. He had extensive experience fighting Batman. He knew that even a child Batman had the potential to turn defeat into victory. No time for complacency. He only told me to bring you back, not that you had to be unharmed, Deathstroke declared. Even if I break your limbs and bring you back, I'll still be considered mission accomplished. With that, he finished. Deathstroke suddenly charged toward Bruce, so fast that the raindrops didn't even have time to react, leaving behind a human silhouette. His twin swords slashed, severing the rain. Bruce felt a flash of light as two silver streaks flashed before him. He instinctively dodged. However, Deathstroke's target wasn't him. It was Katoom, flying beside him. Deathstroke couldn't rest easy knowing this strange owl wouldn't die. As his blades reached Katoom, the owl flapped its wings, its body twisting as if drawn by a point of mass. It vanished from its original position and reappeared several meters away. Teleportation, or the Speed Force, Deathstroke's attack missed. He didn't know apparition, but he had seen similar powers. Just then, Bruce's voice rang in his ears. Deathstroke instantly realized he'd chosen the wrong target. The owl was a decoy. Leviosa. Seizing the opportunity when Deathstroke's attack ran out, Bruce unleashed a long-awaited levitation spell. Success. Seeing Deathstroke's feet lift off the ground, Bruce immediately followed up with a series of spells. Ice Freeze. The spell rang out, chilling Deathstroke's body and freezing the rain. In the blink of an eye, he was transformed into a human-shaped ice sculpture, plummeting to the ground. 4-5. Bruce was about to cast a slicing spell, shattering the ice sculpture into smithereens, but Katoom interrupted him. "That's enough," the owl said gravely. "We can leave now." "Why?" Bruce was baffled. He already had the upper hand. A single slicing spell would have completely defeated Deathstroke. Why would he stop? The answer was soon revealed. Countless cracks began to spread across Deathstroke's ice sculpture, and then, like the sound of shattering glass, it crumbled to dust. Deathstroke stood amidst the icy rain, his armor unscathed. Bruce's pupils constricted as he realized the problem. As Katoom had warned him long ago, Deathstroke's armor was forged from promethium, making it indestructible. Bruce's current magic was powerless to destroy it. And even after painstakingly destroying the armor, Deathstroke himself retained the ability to heal. Coupled with the awakening sword in the stone in his wield, Deathstroke was now arguably one of the strongest forces in this wasteland of Earth. From the very beginning, this was a battle he couldn't win. Elsewhere, Hawkeye collapsed to the ground. Red Skull, wielding Captain America's shield, hammered him repeatedly. Ever since learning that Galactus was bound to Red Skull's life, Hawkeye had become timid and lost, making the battle naturally one-sided. "What's wrong, Hawkeye? You were going to kill me, weren't you? Why aren't you talking now?" Red Skull laughed wildly, clutching his beloved shield, reveling in the thrill of the slaughter. Hawkeye's pupils began to dilate, his life drawing to a close. As for Logan? He was nowhere to be found anywhere on the battlefield. Perhaps he had slipped away from the very beginning. "We can't win, let's go," Katoom kept whispering in Bruce's ear, wanting to take him away from this world. Bruce stood in the pouring rain, despair spreading in his heart. Katoom boosted others' ambitions and destroyed his own prestige, a complete fugitive owl. Deathstroke has only one weakness, that is, the super serum he once received is defective. When his emotions lose control and he falls into rage, or when he is seriously injured and heals too much, his mind will be occupied by madness and bestiality. Apart from that, he is invincible. "Bruce, you can't win, run away with me." Katoom kept chattering, but Bruce became more and more annoyed. What on earth did this owl do before? Did he say that he was the king of demons? Why was he thinking about running away? But, suddenly, a strange idea appeared in Bruce's mind. Did Katoom really want to take him away? Bruce knew very well that the owl didn't need his consent to take him away from this world. He could just grab him, approach to a safe place, then open the passage to the heavens and leave naturally. But Katoom didn't do that. Not only that, he was even helping him analyze the weaknesses of Deathstroke. "Katoom, what on earth are you thinking about? Let's go. If we don't leave now, we will have no chance," the owl chirped, looking like the end of the world, but he still didn't make any move to leave, but just kept talking. Bruce suddenly whispered, "Katoom, you actually think I can win, right?" He believed in his own judgment, and Katoom felt that he could win. But the question was how to win? His magic was useless, and Bruce could not find any possibility of winning. "I don't understand what you are saying," the owl was still shaking his head. "In a world that is about to be destroyed, what is the point of winning or losing? Be careful." Bruce suddenly realized that the death knell had come to him again without him knowing when, and the shadow enveloped Bruce. The death knell raised both swords high, and was about to chop them down, cutting off Bruce's limbs and bringing him to Barbatos. This was what the death knell had always thought, and he was about to succeed. But at this moment, a huge roar came from behind Bruce. A red convertible chariot turned on the high beams and roared through the white rain. "Bruce, get out of the way," the white-haired old man in the driver's seat shouted. He was soaked, and his eyes were burning with blood that had not cooled for 50 years. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, Darkness of the Rainfall. A chariot flew over Bruce's head, knocking Deathstroke out of his way. The chariot landed, and Logan floored the accelerator. The spider chariot, bearing Deathstroke's weight, roared towards Red Skull. Deathstroke was practically enraged. Such a simple mission, how could there be so many twists and turns? He withstood the impact of the spider chariot and plunged his swords into the ground, trying to stop the chariot. But his swords were too sharp, easily slicing through the ground, failing to slow the chariot. Red Skull watched helplessly as a chariot hurtled toward him, instinctively dodging to the side. But Logan's target hadn't been him in the first place. Logan yanked the steering wheel, sending the spider chariot spinning and sending Deathstroke flying. He then leaned over and scooped the bloodied Hawkeye back into the backseat. The spider chariot rolled back to Bruce's side. Logan leaped from the chariot, grabbing Bruce with one hand and Katoom with the other, and tossed them both onto the chariot. "Can you drive?" Logan shouted, his face wet with rain. "I can," Bruce shouted back. "I learned in Hawaii." "That's good. Take Hawkeye and get out of here. Ignore any pursuers. You must escape." Logan was resolute. "Even if we lose Hawkeye at this critical moment, you must survive." "What about you?" Bruce demanded. "Leave me alone." Logan turned around. Deathstroke had risen to his feet again, his Prometheum armor intact. "I'm not leaving," Bruce called out from behind. He couldn't leave Logan alone here. "All right," Logan turned back. "You belong in another world. There's no need to die with this one." Bruce's face drained of all expression at that. "How did you know?" "I knew it all along. This rotten world couldn't have a child like you," Logan shouted. "A pervert in a red tights came to me back then. That's when I knew other universes existed." "Kid, go back to your world. Don't you still want to be a hero?" "You can only be a hero if you survive." Bruce had nothing to say. Tears flowed from his eyes, mixing with the rain. Logan's determination made him understand that the old man's decision could not be changed. At least rescue Hawkeye first. With this mood, Bruce sat in the driver's seat, and began to operate the vehicle in a hurry. Inadvertently, he touched the switch of the car audio. The rock music that Hawkeye had not finished playing before began to play, and at this moment, it was annoying to hear. Bruce stepped on the accelerator and the spider chariot started. "Goodbye, kid." Logan didn't even look back and let Bruce go away. Professor X's last words rang in his ears. "Our world is about to be destroyed, but he will remember us." "Remember my story?" "That's fine too." Logan stood in the rainstorm, looking at the Deathstroke and Red Skull not far away. "Sorry, no passing here." Bruce's mind was blank, and he drove the car mechanically in the rain. He and Katoom were both soaked, but he still couldn't stop. He had to at least find a safe place to put Hawkeye there. Hawkeye in the back seat had lost consciousness, and the blood on his body was soaked by the rain. Bruce wrapped the cloak given by Dumbledore around him, hoping to maintain his body temperature. The sound of horns came from behind, and a row of black cars were chasing closely. It was the Red Skull's military police. The spider chariot broke through the rain curtain, and the branches on the roadside danced wildly in the rain. "Katoom," Bruce shouted. "Give me the Dionysus factor." Hawkeye could not hold on any longer. He couldn't watch Hawkeye die. "It's meaningless, Bruce." Katoom's voice was very low. "Even if you save him now, he will still die after the world is destroyed, and the Dionysus factor cannot be reversed." "I don't care." Bruce roared in anger. A black car approached the spider car. Bruce swerved the steering wheel and used the car body to knock the car away. He didn't know what had happened to Logan. Bruce was now extremely anxious. Hawkeye and Logan were both on the verge of death. At this moment, the car stereo stopped playing Hawkeye's rock music and started playing Logan's song. It was a very old song, with lonely and painful lyrics. "I hurt myself again today. See if I still feel it. Concentrate on feeling this pain. This is the only real thing." Logan roared and rushed towards Deathstroke and Red Skull. He had been cut by countless wounds, but they healed quickly. When he knew what he was protecting again, Logan was no longer confused. He was still the old man in his twilight years, but he dared to use his body to stop the most dangerous enemy. "Don't go after that boy." Logan hadn't fought in 50 years. Facing the most powerful mercenary, Deathstroke, he was almost powerless to fight back. Logan was knocked down again and again, but he stood up again and again. How could someone as troublesome as you exist? Deathstroke's patience was nearly exhausted. He held back, intent on swiftly dispatching the impeding Logan. However, all he did was to see Logan's healing speed accelerate. Deathstroke didn't want to waste any more time. He gripped his swords tightly, stabbed them into Logan's body, and then pulled them apart, nearly severing him in half. With a thud, Logan collapsed to the ground, dead. Finally smitten with this disgusting creature, Deathstroke sheathed his swords and passed by Logan, intending to pursue Bruce. He could have accomplished his mission, but then this creature showed up. What a waste of time. However, just as Deathstroke took a step, someone suddenly grabbed his ankle, preventing him from moving forward. It was Logan who had grabbed him. The old man collapsed in a pool of blood, his voice weak. No passage. He repeated his words. He would never let Deathstroke catch Bruce. Logan was old, and his life was drawing to a close. The only thing he could do now was to use his decaying bones as fuel to ignite the flame of hope. "I don't even know what you're holding on to," Deathstroke cursed. What? He didn't know. But Bruce, that kid, said he wanted to be a hero. Logan laughed bitterly, then coughed up mouthfuls of blood. "To be a role model," Logan said weakly. "The heroic spirit was like this, passed down from generation to generation." Deathstroke pulled a pistol from his waistband, pulled the trigger, and with a flash of muzzle flash, the bullet pierced Logan's brain. "Role model," Deathstroke sneered. The age of idealism was dead, never to be rekindled. He turned and continued forward. But just then, a sharp pain shot through his feet. Deathstroke looked down, only to see a steel claw pry open the gap between his leg armor and pierce his ankle deeply. "What is this?" Deathstroke's pupils suddenly constricted. "Ah!" A wolf's howl, silent for 50 years, echoed again between heaven and earth. Logan exerted force and pulled out the steel claw. Amidst the dripping blood, a burly figure rose to his feet. With a creaking sound of metal scraping against metal, he extended another adamantium claw, sealed for 50 years. Logan's song, played on the car stereo, had reached its end. "If I could start over again, even if I were thousands of miles away, I would still be myself, I would find my path." Logan crossed his claws, forming an X. Deathstroke's bullet had killed an elderly man, but it had also awakened the superhero within him, dormant for 50 years. Logan was dead. Wolverine lives on. Chapter 70 The Godfather. Veins bulged on Wolverine's wrists, his entire aura transformed. It was as if he had been reborn, radiating an unprecedented savagery and ferocity. In that moment, he abandoned all distractions, and with an almost fanatical determination and unreserved resolve, he launched a direct and fierce attack at Deathstroke. Steel claws slashed through the night, gleaming with a chilling cold. Deathstroke raised his sword to block. The clash of claws and swords resounded like thunder in the rainy night, sparks flickering in the darkness, illuminating the rain-soaked battlefield. Wolverine howled to the heavens, giving Deathstroke no chance to breathe. His attacks were relentless, like a barrage of artillery fire. One strike followed another. Steel claws darted through the rain, slicing through the torrential downpour. Wolverine single-handedly unleashed a storm of slaughter, forcing Deathstroke to passively defend, unable to strike back. Even his vaunted Prometheum armor couldn't stop Wolverine's attack. The steel claws struck the suit with a clang of metal, leaving 3 distinct scratches. Wolverine's claws were forged from the purest adamantium, rivaling even Prometheum in every way. "This is crazy." Deathstroke's injured ankle had healed, but victory hadn't tipped his way. He began to feel like he wasn't fighting a human, but a beast. One filled with murderous intent, its eyes focused solely on prey. Wolverine had abandoned all rationality, wanting only to rip his foe to pieces, leaving no room for maneuver. Deathstroke remembered clearly that just minutes earlier, the old man had been powerless against him. But after a single shot, he had overpowered him, unable to return a blow. Why? Was it really him, Deathstroke, who had underestimated the heroes of the world? Deathstroke understood his current situation and could no longer remain passive. Thinking of this, he suddenly gave up on defense. In such a fierce battle, such behavior is tantamount to suicide. The wolf claws really attacked, and this time they directly tore through Deathstroke's helmet, revealing half of his face and claw marks on his face that were deep enough to see the bone. At the same time, Deathstroke turned his head to look at Red Skull not far away. "Red Skull? Why are you looking at me?" There was no answer, he only saw a flash of cold light in front of his eyes. Red Skull's perspective began to fall continuously, all the way to the ground. He saw his body, still standing in the same place. Red Skull wondered, what kind of strange perspective was this? However, before he could figure it out, Red Skull's thoughts had completely stopped. He died, his head cut off by Deathstroke. At the moment when Red Skull's heartbeat stopped, the star-devouring weapon in the sky received the command to start. The weapon started at full power, and countless energy pulses were released uncontrollably. In an instant, the sky erupted in lightning and thunder, affecting the entire new utopia. Space began to visibly warp, gravity shifted, and some parked vehicles began to float into the air. 10 minutes, Deathstroke raised his head and looked at Wolverine. In the next 10 minutes, whether you can kill me or not, you will be destroyed along with the world. He forced a smile, and the scars on his face began to heal automatically. The destruction of the world is a fate, not subject to human will. From the moment the Devourer weapon appeared, it was destined to go out of control. And now Deathstroke has only accelerated the process. Tonight, no one can escape it. As for Bruce, Deathstroke was not worried at all. Self-proclaimed heroes can be held hostage by their moral compass. Bruce will return. Otherwise, allowing a world to be destroyed before his eyes will be enough to become his eternal obsession. Bruce's heroic journey will be completely cut short. The Devourer weapon activated, and the phenomenon affected the entire new utopia, expanding continuously. The city shook, the sea flooded back, and the end of the world had arrived. Bruce piloted the spider chariot, ramming several approaching cars. The remaining pursuers gradually lost ground, realizing something was amiss. It was no longer worth pursuing Bruce. The Galactus weapon has activated. Katoom glanced back at the sky. Bruce, we really need to leave. The Galactus weapon spiraled out of control, unleashing a pulse of energy that could easily crumble a mountain range. Such power was beyond human control. They truly needed to leave. However, Bruce didn't respond. He knelt white, digging his fingers into the steering wheel. Bruce stared straight ahead, letting the rain wash over his face. No time to hesitate, Bruce, Katoom sighed. There's really no time now. There's nothing we can do, nothing. Bruce refused to accept this reality. He felt that if he chose to leave this time, he would never be able to let it go. Fleeing in the face of Deathstroke or standing by and watching the world's destruction would be a catastrophic experience. This can't be the case. He thought, Bruce, you won't give up so easily. There's still time, think of a way out. The spider chariot sped away, the clock ticking. The world was in a complete countdown to destruction. Even the gravity around Bruce was failing. The soil, trees, and rocks along the road began to be sucked into the air, flying in one direction. The planet-devouring weapon was like a massive black hole, threatening to devour everything on Earth. Such a crisis was simply beyond Wolverine's control. Bruce turned to look at Katoom, only to find Owl watching him silently. He was waiting for an answer. Katoom offered no hints, because all the clues were already before Bruce. In that instant, everything Owl had ever said flooded back into Batboy's mind, even those infernal jokes. The path to redemption lay there. Suddenly, a crack of thunder echoed in the sky, and Bruce's mind felt like it had been struck by lightning. Everything in the past flashed through his mind like a revolving lantern, and Bruce was shocked. He had figured it out. So that's how it is, everything is so simple. Bruce knew how to save this world on the verge of destruction. But the current situation is far from enough for him to do it alone. For the first time, the determination to face death appeared on Bruce's 12-year-old face. If you are still confused, don't set out. But Bruce is no longer confused, he will not run away, he wants to save the world. Katoom, Bruce stretched out his hand to the owl. Give me strength. Katoom almost laughed out of anger. You really dare to speak. I told you that you are wasting your time, this world is already please, Godfather. Chapter 71 The Dark Knight Returns. At this moment, Katoom, who had originally insisted on running, finally changed his tune. He sighed, I can only give you 10 times the strength. Any more, and your body won't be able to handle it. Enough. Bruce nodded firmly, the rain unable to erode his resolve. Just like that day in the Hogwarts basement, Katoom's wings enveloped him. Man and bird, one, united as one. That powerful force surged into Bruce's body once again. Bruce slammed on the brakes and stopped the car in the middle of the road. I'm no longer the child who cried in the alley. Bruce unbuckled his seatbelt and climbed onto the roof. With a flip of his hand, a test tube containing Dionysus Factor appeared in his hand. He opened the lid, and a drop of Dionysus Factor flew into Hawkeye's body. In his mind's eye, Katoom closed his eyes, heartbroken but pretending nothing had happened. Hawkeye's broken body began to mend, and his weak breathing regained strength. The cloak wrapped around him flew up, landing on Bruce's shoulders, rustling in the rain. Bruce raised his head, his gaze piercing this world on the brink of destruction. Now, I speak to the will of the world, rumble, a continuous roar of violent thunder, as if the will of the world were revealing its presence. I am the heir of the Wayne family, the future Batman. I, too, am a student of Hogwarts. I possess the courage of a Gryffindor, the wisdom of a Ravenclaw, the kindness of a Hufflepuff, and the faith of a Slytherin. Katoom nodded, and my optimism. Bruce raised his head and roared, I will show you my qualities. You can trust me completely. If you still have a desire to save yourself, respond to my will. From the moment he began this journey through the heavens, Katoom had told Bruce the purpose of this journey. To gain the power to deny it from beyond the world. Now that this world is on the brink of destruction, it claims that nothing can change it. Let Bruce try. Let this visitor from beyond this world see if he can change the destiny already determined. Bruce raised his hand and whispered, incoming Thor's hammer. Thousands of kilometers away, in Hummerful. The effects of the devouring star weapon hadn't yet reached this area, and all seemed peaceful. In the center of town, Mjolnir, silent for half a century, suddenly shook slightly. The shaking intensified, as if finally breaking free from its 50-year shackles. Mjolnir rose from thin air, a myriad of lightning swirling around it. A boom, a thunderclap awakened the town's inhabitants. They scrambled to their feet in panic and looked out the windows. A flash of lightning shot up from the ground, carrying the force of 1,000 thunderbolts, hurtling towards the boundless sky. In the new utopia, dark clouds rolled in the sky, and thunder gathered. As Bruce uttered that call, not even a second passed before a thunderbolt struck him. Bruce clenched his fist, the thunder dissipated, and a warhammer appeared in his hand. Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, at your command. Bruce looked at the hammer, cracked and on the verge of collapse. Perhaps at best, he could fight just one more time. But those same cracks were now constantly releasing lightning. Bruce could even faintly sense the joy and desire emanating from Thor's hammer. It rejoiced to be picked up again, eager for an unreserved battle. Bruce bowed his head and addressed Mjolnir, if you lose the next battle, the world will be destroyed. This will not only be your last, but also the world's last. Thunder roared from the hammer, and blue lightning, almost condensing into liquid form, enveloped Bruce's entire body, forming a thunder suit. It was Batman's appearance. Since you are ready, let's fight. Bruce suddenly looked up, his eyes blazing with endless lightning. Fight for Logan's safety. Fight for my beliefs. Fight for the world's survival. Fight. 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 Bruce swung Mjolnir violently, transforming into a bolt of lightning, hurtling in the direction he had fled in panic. Today, Bruce Wayne, will fight his last battle for this world. After a few clinking metal sounds, the two figures abruptly separated. Deathstroke wiped the blood from his eyes and sneered, looks like you can't kill me. Several noticeable cracks appeared on his Prometheum armor. His once impenetrable defense had finally been breached. Elsewhere, Wolverine was panting heavily. Although he could heal all his wounds through faith, the intense fighting was still beginning to wear thin. Unfortunately, he had only just regained his powers. With a little more time to get used to them, he could overcome the waning strength. It's almost time. Deathstroke wanted to ignore Wolverine. He had fulfilled his promise. Deathstroke hadn't left the scene even a single step. But now, with the world about to end, nothing mattered. Bruce hadn't arrived yet. Deathstroke couldn't help but wonder, could he really have escaped? If so, that would be truly ridiculous. The Batman of the future would never appear again. Just as he was thinking this, Deathstroke saw a figure flying over the horizon. Here they are. Deathstroke felt a surge of joy, a sudden sense of relief. Finally, there was no need to continue fighting Wolverine. Neither of them could defeat the other, only a meaningless exchange of exhaustion. Now that Bruce had dared to return, things were different. Just ignore Wolverine and take Bruce away. Deathstroke gripped the sword in the stone tightly. For some reason, a strange power suddenly emerged from the sword, as if warning Deathstroke of danger. What's going on? Deathstroke didn't have time to process the sudden change, as the figure approached. Then he saw a torrent of lightning trailing behind it, like a thunderstorm. The figure suddenly vanished from the sky. Boom! A bolt of lightning struck Deathstroke. He instinctively dodged, only to find that the lightning bolt took shape in front of him. It was Batman, seemingly made of lightning. Who are you? Deathstroke was truly panicked this time. He had never seen Batman in this form before. Could that fleeing Bruce have created this? Who am I? Bruce's voice suddenly echoed from within the lightning form. I am revenge. I am the night. Boom. Bruce gripped Thor's hammer tightly with both hands, swung it with all his might, and smashed it hard on Deathstroke. The Promethean metal armor blocked most of the damage, but the cracks on it inevitably missed several lightning bolts. Deathstroke coughed up blood and was knocked away by the huge impact. The lightning flowed, making Bruce look like an adult. He shook his hand, turned Thor's hammer, and said indifferently, I am Batman. Chapter 72 Fly, Little Bat. Bruce swung his hammer, and Deathstroke barely managed to block the sword in the stone against his chest. Clang, metal clashed, and Deathstroke was once again knocked back dozens of meters. Bruce's gaze was cold, and he suddenly raised Thor's hammer high. Instantly, the sky was filled with lightning and thunder. A dazzling flash of lightning split the sky, like a god's sword, instantly rendezvousing the darkness. Then, a deafening roar of thunder, like the roar of a great beast, shook the world. Bruce would not lose. With tenfold amplification and the power of Thor, his chances of victory were now 1000%. The thunderstorm erupted in full force, and lightning danced in the air in succession. Along with the deafening thunder, torrential rain poured down, as if the sky had unleashed all its fury. Every drop of rain, carrying the force of thunder, slammed into the ground and into the shattered Deathstroke. Deathstroke's armor could no longer withstand the force, and he struggled to raise the sword in the stone above his head, drawing the lightning. But this was only a temporary solution. If he continued, he would surely lose. Why? He couldn't even defeat a 12-year-old Batman. Humiliation and rage overwhelmed Deathstroke, his eyes tinged with violence and madness. The serum's flaws were now apparent, and Deathstroke's animal nature began to take over, just as Wolverine had before. With no hope in sight, he would fight with all his might to find a glimmer of hope. Ah! Deathstroke roared, charging at Bruce. The sword in the stone surged with murderous intent, its divine power gradually awakening. Bruce felt the pressure, yet had no intention of evading. He swung Thor's hammer, meeting it head-on. Boom! The divine forces collided, repelling everything from the surrounding area, even creating a gaping hole in the dark clouds. Thor's hammer in Bruce's hand suddenly shattered. This collision had exceeded its current limit. Deathstroke's single eye widened, a flicker of joy crossing his face. He won, did he? No. That's not right. Deathstroke watched as the hammer shattered into countless fragments, defying the laws of physics and suspended in midair. Each shard gleamed with lightning, arcs of electricity connecting them, yet the shattered hammer remained a single piece. Thor's hammer would indeed break, but not now. Bruce didn't want to say more. He swung his arm with all his might, unreserved. Thor's hammer fragments and arcs of electricity formed a whip that seemed to pierce the heavens and earth, carrying a force that could collapse the earth and the sky, and struck Deathstroke. Deathstroke had no place to hide, and could only watch as his vision was completely occupied by the thunder. Crack, crack, Deathstroke took the blow firmly, and countless cracks in his armor began to spread, quickly covering his entire body. Then, the indestructible suit of Promethean metal collapsed with a loud bang. Deathstroke fell to the ground, coughing up blood. He wasn't dead yet, but he was almost there. Countless tiny arcs of electricity raced through his body, constantly destroying it. Even if Deathstroke had the ability to heal, it was useless. Every time he healed, the arcs destroyed him again, seemingly endlessly. After the last blow, the fragments of Thor's hammer reunited, transforming into the shape of a warhammer once again. Bruce no longer cared to look at Deathstroke. He raised his head and gazed at the high-altitude Galactus. By then, Galactus had formed a powerful force field, drawing everything inward and shredding it into dust. The dust gathered and formed a dust ring around Galactus. There was no time. Bruce bent his legs and leaped high, his cape rustling behind him as he flew towards the massive head. Thunder gathered around him like a river, the earth-shaking thunder roaring like the will of the world. At this moment, Galactus also sensed the approach of an extremely high-energy object. Its protective systems activated instantly. Those previously scattered energy pulses coalesced into a single, surging force, launching towards Bruce, intent on blasting him to pieces mid-air. Above, Wolverine, clutching his healing wound, gazed up at the sky, completely speechless. The energy surge and the thundering sky were about to collide. He could only witness in silence, speechless. Whether this world could be saved would be revealed in the next few seconds. The moment the two energies collided, the entire world seemed to fall silent. Not a sound was heard, for even the air was obliterated by the collision, creating a vacuum. The collision continued. Bruce gripped Thor's hammer tightly, drawing more lightning from the heavens and earth, hoping to break through the torrent of energy from the Galactus weapon. But it was too difficult. He gritted his teeth, his arms trembling, his body on the verge of disintegration. Despite his utmost effort, facing a world-destroying force, he still fell just short. Just a little bit, truly just a little bit. Was he about to fail? Bruce roared. Even if it meant consuming his last ounce of strength, he would push back the torrent of energy. He would never retreat. At that moment, it was as if the very universe had answered his conviction. Suddenly, Bruce felt a strange, immense energy surging from behind him. This force far exceeded the limits of Galactus's weapon. Looking back, Bruce saw countless figures, made of lightning, rising one after another from the sea of thunder. Some wielded vibranium shields, some wore armor, some resembled gods, some controlled chaos. The figures stretched endlessly. They were the long-dead superheroes of this world, their wills undying, now with Bruce. Even in a universe rife with evil, justice cannot be extinguished. It was these heroes who gave Bruce the strength to persevere. A figure approached Bruce, and from his features, Bruce recognized it as Professor X, whom he had only met once. "I've always wanted to see you, and now I finally have my wish." Professor X smiled, put his hand on Bruce's shoulder, and gave him some strength. "Good boy, we'll take care of your back, don't worry about anything." Bruce suddenly understood that he had never been fighting alone. The moment he chose to save the world, the whole world would stand on his side. Bruce turned around, and the power in his body boiled endlessly. At this moment, he was no longer Batman, or rather, he was not just Batman. With Bruce's roar, the torrent of world destruction was completely shattered. With his cloak fluttering and thunder roaring, Bruce rushed towards the star-devouring weapon with the will of the entire world. Is it moth to flame, or can he save the world? The souls of those heroes are watching Bruce, waiting for the final outcome. Professor X smiled, with boundless relief and trust in his eyes. Fly forward bravely, little bat. Chapter 73. Just a bunch of orphans. This was a test. Bruce's true resolve was revealed at this moment. Empowered by the will of the entire universe, Bruce reached the face of the Galactus weapon, unhindered. He gripped Mjolnir with both hands and, with unmatched determination, delivered the blow that severed the thread of fate. Is the end of the world a fixed destiny, unchangeable? Bruce would test himself to prove it wrong. Boom! A hammer that shook the universe struck the Galactus weapon. Unable to maintain its stability, the immense force sent it careening towards the atmosphere. Bruce hovered in the air, opened his palm, and a vast tunnel across the heavens appeared in Galactus's path. Galactus entered the tunnel and departed this world. At that moment, the countdown to world destruction reached its final second. Galactus's power erupted within the tunnel, then quickly subsided. This force was indeed formidable, powerful enough to destroy a world. Yet, in the vastness of the universe, it was still too insignificant. Bruce's plan succeeded. He had sent the power of world destruction beyond the realm of the universe. He had successfully averted a crisis destined for certainty. Calm descended, the thunderstorm subsided, and the heroic figures began to dissipate. Bruce's performance reassured them to embrace peace. Professor X smiled, gave the Batman a final look, and, free of any worries, departed. The clouds slowly parted, revealing a bright night sky. Bruce descended to the ground, the power of Thor ripped from him, and the hammer in his hand shattered into pieces, scattering across the ground. Mine, mine. All mine. Ripples rippled across Bruce's chest, and an owl flew out of it in a hurry. He landed near the shattered hammer, gathering each piece into its feathers. His fusion state dissolved, and Bruce felt an immense fatigue. He collapsed onto his back, gasping for air. "I did it," he said weakly. "I really did it." This success meant so much to him. If the predetermined doomsday could be altered, then transforming Gotham was no longer just a dream. It was possible. Bruce's tears streamed down his face. Choosing to travel the universe had proven to be the right decision. Katoom was busy picking up the shattered pieces of his hammer, too busy to notice Bruce's thoughts. By the time he finished, Bruce's emotions had calmed down. "Why are you crying?" Katoom asked curiously. He had already flown to the other side and picked up Captain America's shield, which Red Skull had dropped. Nothing. Bruce remained lying on the ground. Though his emotions had calmed down, he was still severely exhausted. For a moment, he couldn't even sit up. At that moment, a question suddenly occurred to him. Katoom, did you lie to me before? Bruce asked. You said my body could only withstand 10 times the force, but those seniors just now gave me far more than 10 times the force, so what if I lied to you? Katoom said nonchalantly. I like to tell a few lies, but that's not the point. The point is that we prevented the destruction of the world. Fine, whatever you say. Bruce didn't want to dwell on it anymore. He just wanted to rest. Katoom was still scavenging for loot, but as he flew, he suddenly let out a strange cry. Ouch! Bruce's attention was drawn, and he turned and asked, what happened? Deathstroke's gone. Katoom pointed in a direction. The spot where Deathstroke should have been lying was deserted. But the fragments of Deathstroke's armor remained. He must have gone back home, Bruce thought. Jason had also vanished in the same spot when he returned. In truth, Katoom didn't care what happened to Deathstroke. The problem was that Deathstroke still had the sword in the stone. Now it had disappeared with him. What a loss. If he really went back home, that would be fine. Katoom remembered the sword in the stone's power. It could split the barriers of the multiverse, but that was limited to Marvel. If Deathstroke hadn't returned to DC, but had used the sword in the stone to escape to another Marvel universe, that would be a lot of fun. But no matter what, the sword in the stone was out of his reach. Katoom consoled himself by thinking that getting the Prometheum wasn't a loss. He flew over to the armor fragments and picked up a piece. At that moment, something strange happened. The Prometheum metal in Katoom's wings suddenly began to vibrate uncontrollably, faintly resonating with Katoom's Dionysian factor. Then, a beam of light shot out from the Prometheum metal and struck the sky. At that moment, the once tranquil night sky was once again shrouded in a haze, a strange and ominous atmosphere almost tangible. What's going on? Katoom turned, seeing the edge of the sky, and suddenly opened his eyes. A figure clad in a massive black cloak appeared, instantly obscuring the entire sky. Beneath the cloak, a distorted and terrifying humanoid figure stared intently at Bruce lying on the ground. The sudden sense of terror made Bruce sit up suddenly. Barbatos, he called out. The figure in the sky was undoubtedly Barbatos, the Bat God. He had actually caught up with him? Katoom frowned, quickly taking in the details. He shouted, "Don't worry, it's a projection." It was indeed a projection, not Barbatos himself. Owl glanced at the Prometheum in his hand. It seemed the two metals' arrival at Bruce's side wasn't a coincidence. It was Barbatos's deliberate arrangement. Bruce. At that moment, the projected Barbatos slowly called out the name, his voice brimming with evil and longing. Barbatos opened his palm, and a black flower blossomed. Atop each petal stood a figure, staring intently at Bruce. "You can't escape," Barbatos declared in a distorted voice. "You can't escape." The figures on the petals echoed the words simultaneously. Katoom saw clearly, exactly 7. These were Barbatos Dark Knights, 7 Batmen from the Dark Multiverse. Each Dark Batman corresponds to a Justice League veteran: Superman, the devastating force wielding the power of doom; Wonder Woman, the merciless iron-fisted warrior wielding the might of Ares; the Flash, the Red Death wielding the speed force; Green Lantern, the blazing light of dawn who initiated the Blackout Project; Aquaman, the drowned souls drowning the world; Cyborg, the killing machine who sees the world as a virus; and finally, the final heavyweight, the Joker and Batman combined, the Batman who laughs. Now, the projections appeared simultaneously, declaring one thing to Bruce Wayne: "You have nowhere to hide. We will eventually capture you." Bruce looked up, silent. He had heard Katoom talk about the Dark Knights, but he hadn't expected to see them so soon. Were these all Bruce Wayne's parallel selves? But how did they become this way? Bruce was still pondering this question when Katoom flew beside him. "What are you still hesitating about? Barbatos is mocking us," the owl cursed. "If you don't attack them, I will attack you." "You don't have to tell me." Bruce threw the previous thought out of his mind without hesitation. Even if it was himself in a parallel world, what would happen? Now they are enemies. They even dared to show off in front of him. Do they really think he has no temper? Bruce stared at Barbatos and his 7 Batmen in the sky with a firm gaze. He raised his hand, extended his middle finger, and stood upright. "My destiny is controlled by myself," Bruce said coldly to the sky. "None of you can decide my future, so what if there are 7 Batmen? They are just a group of orphans." Chapter 74. Will we meet again? Barbatos' projection didn't last long. It vanished quickly. He had intended to demonstrate his power over Bruce, to instill fear in him. He hadn't expected the little bat that had escaped from under his nose to grow so much in just a year. Bruce feared bats, but not a bat god. Barbatos' projection dissipated, and the sky returned to its original state. The city of New Utopia was now in ruins, but within this world, something new emerged. Hope. Bruce, an exhausted Wolverine, approached Bruce. He was still shaken by what had just happened, unable to recover. The figures from the dark multiverse were beyond Wolverine's comprehension. "Those are your enemies?" Wolverine asked, eyes wide. "Have you always faced these kinds of things?" He couldn't imagine how Bruce had managed to survive such terrifying foes. Bruce, however, remained unfazed. "There's nothing to worry about, Uncle Logan. I'm not fighting alone, all right." Wolverine accepted this explanation. After all, he had just witnessed a countless heroic spirits bless Bruce. Perhaps this child was meant to soar to the wider skies. However, Wolverine looked down and saw the owl that always followed Bruce, twirling at its steel claws. It seemed to be trying to pull one out. "Haha, little owl, this isn't something you can play with." With everything settled, Wolverine relaxed, even feeling like joking with the owl. He retracted his claws, picked up Katoom, and placed him next to Bruce. Then he clenched his fist, extended and retracted the claws several times, demonstrating them to Katoom. "This is a part of me, and only I can control it," Wolverine sighed as he gazed at the adamantium claws. "I never thought I'd see the day I'd be able to use them again." Wolverine was no longer the aged man he had been. Thanks to his healing factor, a few strands of black hair had even appeared at his temples. This scene left Katoom feeling a little dissatisfied. "What are you bragging about? It's just an ordinary pair of steel claws, and you're the only one treating them like treasures." Expelliarmus, Owl suddenly cast a disarming spell at Wolverine. With a swish, Wolverine's claws retracted automatically, shocking him. This had only happened when Magneto was alive. Meanwhile, Katoom looked quite disappointed. So the disarming spell only went so far. Beep, beep. Suddenly, a car horn sounded in the distance. Bruce and the others turned to see Hawkeye returning in the spider vehicle. "What happened?" Hawkeye shouted from a distance. His last memory was of being brutally beaten by Red Skull, after which he lost consciousness. When he woke, everything was over. He had somehow won again. The spider vehicle stopped by the roadside, and Hawkeye, waving, ran over, looking like Ultraman in his human form. Only when he got closer did Wolverine notice something was wrong with Hawkeye. "Clint, your eyes, you've got it." Hawkeye smiled, his sunglasses off now, revealing a pair of dark pupils. His glaucoma had healed. "I don't know why, but my vision returned as soon as I woke up." Hawkeye shook his head and chuckled. "What a shame. I can't tell my favorite blind jokes anymore." He winked at Bruce. Clearly, he knew why. A few days had passed since the battle at Doomsday. The power vacuum created by Red Skull's death was quickly filled by new villains. They were gloating, believing their territory had expanded and their good times would continue. Early in the morning, Bruce woke up in the inn and saw Katoom dismantling something on the table. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Researching recycling." Katoom shook the parts in his wing. They were Spider-Man's web shooters, now scrapped. A few days ago, Owl had stormed into Red Skull's showroom like a tornado, confiscating everything inside. He'd expected to find a ton of goodies, but after inspecting them, he discovered that most of them were now junk. But Owl collected them all anyway. So what if it was junk? He believed that with proper use, even a piece of toilet paper could be revitalized. "Clean up, it's almost time," Bruce reminded him, then went to wash up. When they were done, he and Owl went downstairs. The spider chariot was parked in front of the inn. Wolverine and Hawkeye were already seated. "Bruce, you're really not coming with us?" Wolverine asked. "I'm going back, Uncle Logan." Bruce had gotten up early to say goodbye to the two old men. Oh, no, saying old wasn't quite right now. Neither Wolverine nor Hawkeye had aged, showing signs of returning to youth. "All right then," Wolverine nodded. "What we're about to do isn't really suitable for you, it's too bloody." While the world-destroying crisis had been resolved, the supervillains wouldn't disappear on their own. Those reckless individuals continue to bring suffering to humanity. A new era has arrived. These bastards can no longer be tolerated in this world where there's still hope. Wolverine and Hawkeye are going on a killing spree. Let's say goodbye here." Hawkeye waved to Bruce and asked, "Will we meet again, Bruce?" Maybe. Bruce could only give a vague answer. After all, he didn't know the answer. Hawkeye chuckled and didn't press the issue. As a superhero, he was already accustomed to saying goodbye. With a stab at the accelerator, the spider car roared away, leaving only Bruce waving in his wake. "What a shame," Katoom suddenly said. "I actually want this car, too." "That's enough, you've loaded enough." Bruce shook his head. "Alright, open the portal to the heavens. It's time to leave." A cave entrance appeared before Bruce. He was about to enter when something suddenly occurred to him. "Wait," he said. "I haven't paid Uncle Logan the $10,000 I promised him yet." It's too late. The owl launched a fierce attack from behind Bruce, knocking him into the cave entrance. Then, the figures of man and bird completely disappeared from this world. In the tunnel of the heavens, Bruce retraced the way he had come. Then he asked a crucial question. "Katoom, you're not going to throw me into an orphanage again this time, are you?" Chapter 75, At Flourish and Blots. Fortunately, Bruce's fears didn't come true. He was back in the London of Harry Potter's world, and before him stood an office building. Not the orphanage he'd imagined. However, Bruce looked around, and the place seemed more and more familiar. "Katoom," he roared. "Isn't this the old Woo's orphanage? How dare you say you didn't arrange it?" He hadn't moved to a new world, so he didn't need a new identity. Katoom had already soared high into the sky, loudly defending himself. "Don't spit on me. I really didn't arrange those first 2 times." He felt a pang of regret. He had miscalculated. Who could have imagined that just a year later, the Woo's orphanage would be demolished? His plan hadn't been perfect. Bruce's fury lingered, insisting that everything was Katoom's plan. But Katoom's next words gave him no time to vent his anger. "Don't just stand there like an idiot," the owl suddenly said. "You said you'd bring gifts for those friends. Did you?" Bruce froze. "Didn't you plunder so many things? Those are my treasures. How could I possibly let you give them away?" The owl sighed and pointed with its wing at a roadside gift shop. "Go buy them there. Just remember to remove the tags and no one will notice." Bruce returned to his aunt's house, carrying his bags. When he opened the door, Hermione greeted him with a delighted hug. "Welcome home, Mrs. Granger," with a hint of reproach on her face, took the shopping bag from Bruce. "Why bring home gifts? Aren't you wasting money?" Bruce waved his hand. It's okay. I picked these up in America. They didn't cost much," he emphasized. "In America," Katoom scoffed. If he hadn't reminded him, who knows what the little bat would have done this time. Bruce still had to rely on him for social skills. Bruce's trip took up almost the entire summer vacation. When he returned, it was almost time for Hogwarts to start. He needed to buy new textbooks for the new school year, and Hermione made an appointment with him to go shopping in Diagon Alley. Bruce had no objection. Time flew by. Early in the morning, Bruce and Hermione left home, and Mr. Granger was already waiting outside in his car. "Where's Katoom?" Hermione noticed that the owl hadn't come out with Bruce. "No problem, he'll be out soon." Bruce had barely finished speaking when the owl flew out the window. Excited, it shouted to Bruce from a distance, "Ho ho, your dad's here." Bruce covered his forehead, pretending not to hear anything. All the problems had stemmed from that last call for Godfather. At first, Katoom didn't realize anything, but when he came to his senses, he was like this. It was unknown when he finally calmed down. By the time the family got in the car, the 2 children were still sitting in the back seat. Hermione excitedly shared with Bruce the intelligence she'd gathered about Hogwarts during the summer vacation. "I've been writing to my friends, like Harry and Ron. By the way, do you know them?" Bruce nodded. "I know them, that's good," Hermione continued. "Ron's father works at the Ministry of Magic, so he knows some inside information. He told me that Dumbledore has been visiting the ministry frequently this summer, seemingly submitting some kind of application." Bruce's interest peaked. "What application?" "I'm not sure, but it seems to be something related to teaching." Hermione recalled the contents of the letter. "It seems like Dumbledore wants to open more classes at Hogwarts." "What's there to apply for?" Bruce shook his head. The Ministry of Magic had limited influence within Hogwarts, and Dumbledore didn't need the ministry's approval to open classes. There had to be another reason. He raised his head and asked the owl, "Katoom, what do you think the reason is?" "It's simple," Katoom said bluntly. "With such a big incident last school year, the Ministry of Magic couldn't have remained indifferent. Maybe Dumbledore was going to be fired this year, and he went to the ministry to plead for mercy. I'm listening to you. Bruce immediately knew Katoom was talking nonsense. While he wasn't completely on Dumbledore's side, he also believed that Hogwarts couldn't change its headmaster at this time. Forget it, there was too little information right now, so any speculation was unreliable. We'd know when school started. They followed the same old path, passing the leaky cauldron, and arrived at Diagon Alley. Once they entered Diagon Alley, they went to Gringotts to exchange money. As they emerged from Gringotts, Hermione's eyes suddenly lit up, and she waved and shouted, "Harry! Harry! Come here!" She spotted her friends and ran down to greet them, her fluffy brown hair flying behind her. The man who arrived was none other than Harry Potter, covered in dust and looking like he'd just crawled out of a fireplace. It was unclear what he'd been up to. Beside him stood the large Hagrid, a slightly sullen figure. He'd just been listening to Harry's tragic story about his summer vacation. "Harry, let me introduce you." Hermione brought Harry over. "This is my cousin, Bruce Wayne. Bruce, and this is Harry." "Hello." Bruce shook Harry's hand. "Hello," Harry said timidly. They'd known each other from school, but they'd never met formally. Harry knew Wayne was an exceptional student, and every professor spoke of him with such rave reviews. Just then, the Wheel Eyes came running in from a distance. Seeing Harry, they breathed a sigh of relief. "Harry," Mr. Weasley gasped. "Molly's frantic, she'll be right here." From the chatter of the people behind him, Bruce could vaguely grasp what had just happened. Harry had used flu powder and mispronounced the destination. After some confusion, Bruce was finally officially introduced to the Wheel Eyes. After finishing their various tasks, everyone decided to go to Flourish and Blotts. Arriving, they were surprised to find a large crowd outside, eager to get in. A large banner hung in an upstairs window read, "Gilderoy Lockhart, autographing and selling his autobiography, The Magical Me." "I heard Mr. Lockhart has a big announcement today," Hermione said excitedly, making no secret of her Lockhart fandom. The bookstore was difficult to enter, so Bruce had to wait in line outside. Just then, Katoom whispered in his ear, "Bruce, look at that guy." "Who was that guy?" Bruce turned and saw an old wizard, waiting outside the bookstore with an impatient look on his face. He was mumbling something, as if he was about to cast a spell to expel everyone, but then forced himself to hold back. The old wizard's appearance was very memorable. His eyes were different colors, as if he had two souls living within him. The suitcase in his hands was the kind used by Hogwarts professors. Bruce saw the name on it, Gale Green. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.